war, relentless in the war. The legions in our hearts, shed waters in our balls. The spirit and the flesh, the emotions that arrest. The cerebral will contest, propelling the unrest. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded. The teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Trembling in the haze with the semblance of a blaze. With gratitude and rage, we touch another page. With delirious delight, impervious to light. This vitality and might encourages the flight. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded. The teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. The world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Testing. How are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're going to talk about hierarchies, hierarchies of values, hierarchies of ends worth pursuing. You could exert a lot of discipline and a lot of time trying to be a sage, a wise monk, priest in a particular order. You could exert a lot of time trying to be the star entrepreneur, CEO, the captain of industry. Delaying gratification, practicing a lot of prudence and work ethic. You could exert a lot of time trying to rise amongst the ranks of warriors, to become General Patton, to become Mad Dog Mattis. You could spend a lot of time trying to be an artist that is true to your work and also has commercial success and vast influence. Shout out to Io in the house. But can we have a Pope, sage,
general, badass general that's also a CEO and a pope and a great entertainer and artist? Are some of these ends not even contradictory to each other? Today we're going to explore the notion, the idea, the reality that there are a number of hierarchies. And we're exploring this with the idea to come to the understanding that we should not conflate and confuse between these different hierarchies, to understand which particular hierarchy we are operating in from a standpoint of values, from a standpoint of motivations. And it is all within the framework of motivations from the last video that I made, or the video that I talked about why you exist, that you exist in Storyville, that you are a story and the purpose of your existence is the moral of the story. This is about the various stories that are available and the various morals to those stories, the various ends that are being pursued, the various lessons to be gleaned from these stories. The sage, the monk, the scholar, that group has a particular story, a particular value structure, following a particular hierarchy. Same thing with the merchant, the CEO, businessman type, has a particular story, a particular set of ends being pursued with a particular value structure, separate from the warriors. This is also separate from the artists. We need to know which particular hierarchy game we're playing, and we need to know the order of hierarchies in the society and in our lives as well. Because there tends to be a lot of confusing of hierarchy games. And we don't like confusion over here, do we? Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. My name is Ike Ogiamian, and I am your host. And over here, we talk about being better and doing better. And we need to do better with regards to an understanding of hierarchies. We need to do better about not conflating hierarchies. We need to do better with not just understanding the different kinds of hierarchies, but understanding that there is an ordering of hierarchies, both in societies, and that we have choices to make with ourselves as well. We got Bro Truth in the house. Coming in hot and heavy. So, ladies and gentlemen, the little intro that I just gave about a pope, general, artist, CEO, okay? A sage, wise man, monk, who's also a great general in battle and a CEO and a great artist, writers of great novels. He slays armies in the mornings and he writes novels at night. He runs, he's a captain of industry on the weekends. He has the virtues. He practices the virtues and the values required for all these different domains. Let me get a 1 in the chat if you understand immediately the contradictions here, that this is not possible for real reasons. And we're going to get into it. Oh, yes, you know we're going to break it down. Oh, yes, you know that we're going to get a firm understanding of the various categories involved. But we need to understand, first and foremost, with this simple picture of a sage, wise man, pope type, who also is a great warrior, leader of armies, who also is a captain of industry and writes great poetry at night. A true artist and also a true warrior, also a true holy man. These are different ends. This constitutes a set of contradictions, ladies and gentlemen. A set of contradictions. So we're going to talk about what are the different hierarchy games that are available to be played. What are the common ways in which people confuse them in real practical senses? Because this happens all the time. People say, hey, money is a value. And then people say, well, money won't make you happy. People say, hey, well, this is a high value man and he has these particular parameters for measuring a high value man. And then people say, well, how about my spiritual value and my moral value and all that stuff? We want to stop making such mistakes. We want to be clean. We want to be precise. We don't want fuzziness in our understanding. It is not rocket science. So this is not a complicated stream today, ladies and gentlemen. It is a simple stream where we're going to understand the various hierarchies. And we're going to actually learn about, perhaps for the first time, where we play within these different hierarchies and how we in our own souls order these hierarchies. Every society orders the hierarchies differently. I mean, from ancient times to modern times, the Indian caste system versus the modern Western system of hierarchies. Understanding the various hierarchies, understanding that, hey, just because you're an incel and you're complaining about looks, money, status, doesn't mean you cannot play in another set of hierarchies where you can be the top there. And so you can stop bitching. So that when people mention money, you stop talking about happiness. So that when people talk about the values involved in commercialism, capitalism, and being a merchant, you stop talking about your alphaness or your morality. You need to understand that these things are in different categories. They have always been in different categories. If you are confused as to the nature of these different categories, that is your fault. And we're going to rectify that today. We're going to change that today. We're going to make sure that we stop making this kind of a mistake today. So we're going to get right into it, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to AKA Wes in the house. Shout out to Felicia in the house. Bro Truth. Doug in the house. The winner of Doug won the Negro Manosphere Award. For best moderator, I believe. Isn't that right, Doug? Alonzo in the house. Ayo Adeojo in the house. The wealthy firefighter in the house says, we doing good, Ike. So it is very important, okay, to understand whether you're in the tricking hierarchy, as Bro Truth said, or whether you're actually in the warrior hierarchy. Chaos Reign in the house. Welcome one and all. So we're going to get directly into this. We're going to go ahead and look, and we're going to get rid of the confusion. We're going to open up the panel to people who would like to argue, push back, clarify, so on and so forth. Today is simple. Today is not heavy lifting. It's not complicated. We're simply going to suss this out, okay? We are going to suss this out. Doug said he didn't win this year. Well, that's not cool. We're going to need to find out what O'Shea is smoking in Poland or Uganda or wherever he is these days. So I described a number of hierarchies by describing a number of different achievements, a number of disparate achievements, a number of achievements whose particular aims, goals, virtues required for reaching these goals tend to be contradictory to each other. They don't necessarily blend and mesh. So let's go ahead and just list them, and then we'll get right into them. What are the different hierarchies? Okay. There is, and this is true of many different societies, okay? Whether you talk about the Indian caste system, this very first group, the priest, the sage, the scholar, they call them Brahmins. These are your intellectuals or your monks, your wise men, your... Let me get a one in the chat if it is understood that this particular group here is kind of one and the same fundamentally in terms of the hierarchy games that they're playing. We will break it down later as to the values, the core values of each of these particular groups. But priest, sage, scholar, wise man, monk, same crew. Let me check this over here. Another group is the warrior slash prince. We all know that back in the day, the princes, the warriors, the barons, that crew of people, okay, were called from the same group, were cut from the same cloth. That's why, even if you go as recent as the 18th century, even the 19th century, emperors dressed up in military garb, right? The Caesar with the breastplate, or Emperor, the Kaiser in World War I, right? They wore military garb. They were about one and the same thing. The princes and the warriors and the princes. And that's why even up till today, you have, in the British royal family, for example, it is imperative that the men go to or join the military. Even in contemporary American society, all the way through till at least, the Bushes, definitely the Kennedys, had to go and be in the military. You cannot claim to be playing in this particular hierarchy of princes if you are not going to put your life on the line. Is this well understood? Let me get a one in the chat for this one as well, that the warrior prince is a different hierarchy, okay? Obviously quite separate from the sage, priest, scholar hierarchy, quite very differentiated in all societies, whether it be ancient Greece or India or Rome and the rest of it. The warrior prince, even up till today, as I said, okay, George Bush Sr. had to go to battle. And part of the story is, yes, he was an honorable soldier and he fought with valor. This is that crew, the crew of princes and warriors. They have a set of values, a hierarchy game that they play. And then you have the merchant. Obviously, they've always been there. They've always been there. They have their set of values. They operate with different virtues that are necessary. They live different lives. They're not having to prove themselves. They don't go out and fight duels, for example. People always talk about duels as though all crews did it. No, duels were of a particular strata of the aristocracy. Not every different hierarchy was fighting the duel stuff. No. It was for people who were playing the honor valor game, the warrior prince aristocracy type. Okay? Priests, obviously, the sages, the wise men, the scholars, they were not into fighting duels. No. They had a different structure, a different aim, a different goal, different rank ordering, different notions of honor, different notions of value. These things still exist, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot escape one of these categories. And you cannot, insofar as you are playing social dominance hierarchy games, you cannot ignore that these are received wisdoms. these are other people's, or let's say traditional, evolved over millennia categories that you're playing with. And you cannot jump from one to the other just because it suits you. And if you do, people who know better look at you and laugh, and you look stupid. And we don't want to look stupid over here, do we? We do not want to look stupid over here. And the fourth one, because we could even go more, or we could subdivide and so on and so forth, but these are the four major guys here, okay? These are the four major dominance hierarchy groups: the sage, priest, scholar, wise man, monk type, okay? Totally different set of rules, totally different set of things that you judge that guy by, okay? And then you have the warrior prince, okay? He needs to go out in the front of the battle. He's Alexander the Great. He is Caesar. He conquers. He rules. He takes on risk. He has valor, right? He fights duels. He puts his sons in the military in order to make sure that you are secure in your position amongst that rank. You have to do those things. And then you have the merchant. We know what that's about. Because, by the way, that is the top of the hierarchy in modern day capitalism. But we'll get into that in a second. And then you have the artist. The artist is about expression, the curator of the culture, and also the flipper of hierarchies. And the flipper, the making possibility of new things, is about openness. He was the hermit, the crazy person. The person that's a little bit outside of the hierarchy structure, but had their own set of ends that are being pursued, their own set of values by which they're judged, their own set of virtues by which they pursue these values. So far already, we can begin to concretize, to crystallize certain ideas in our mind so that we understand when we talk about values, we talk about virtues, we talk about hierarchies, we talk about ends worth pursuing, that we can't just scattershot and judge randomly, because a warrior is very different from a scholar, sage, priest, monk, wise man type. You don't judge them by the same things at all. They're two separate pyramids. They are two separate pyramids, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to those coming into the chat. Thank you for joining us this, I believe it's Thursday, right? This Thursday evening. Please go ahead and like as you come in. Please go ahead and like as you come in. Some dude in the house. Some dude in the house. Shout out to you. Shout out to the chat whip, Dr. Thunder, the honorable whip of the chat. The honorable whip in the chat. Interesting. The IT world. So we have a rough outline, a rough sketch. Ladies and gentlemen, we are tickling the mind. We are crystallizing our thoughts. We are creating an understanding of the different dominance hierarchy games. So now let's tease it apart a little bit more. Let's go into each individual one, look at what they rank as top of their pyramid, okay? Because these particular dominance hierarchy games, these different hierarchies and so on and so forth, have different values that they consider to be primary. if you're a pursuer of truth, wisdom, purity, this is where people tend to spiritualize things. This is where people count their riches in heaven. This is where people talk about intellectual honesty being the top. Wisdom, truth, purity. Being the exemplars of that, being the role models of those sets of values in society. Right? Simple enough. The warrior prince, obviously, we're talking about honor and patriotism, valor and risk. These are people whom take risk in exchange for their ranking, basically. What is the sage and priest and scholar replacing for or giving? What do they pay? Everybody pays something. Okay, everybody pays something in order to get a place in this hierarchy structure. Okay? To live a life of purity, for example, you may need to live the ascetic lifestyle depending on which culture you're in. Okay? You may need to give up material possessions. You may need to give up, if you're a Catholic priest, for example, having families. Right? Material possession, families, so on and so forth. The spiritualizing of things, meaning the centeredness of consciousness, whereby consciousness is about, well, things are about consciousness, in other words, pardon me, where it's not so much about material ends. And that's why even up till recent times, the Oxford Dons, which are the professors at Oxford, it was fashionable, okay, for them to wear, tattered clothes. And the elbow patch that, professors wear? Let me get on one in the chat if you know about that elbow patch type jacket, which is kind of synonymous with the scholar type, right? He's got the elbow patch and he's smoking his pipe in his library filled with books. That elbow patch is meant to be an aesthetic representation of what was considered to be the wise sage in rather tattered clothing. Okay? All right? It's like getting jeans and cutting and tearing up your jeans, in order to kind of represent a particular aesthetic. Okay? So, even in recent times, we still do those kinds of things. Okay? It's about being up in the head. Whether you are a priest or a monk or a sage or a wise man or whatever, these particular sets. Okay, there's a trade-off. You trade off certain things and we give you respect. What does the warrior prince trade off? Well, the princes need to be honorable soldiers. They need to go and fight. We mentioned it and we go all the way to George Bush's dad, right? Up till tomorrow, we talk about, well, did he serve in the military? That kind of a thing. So the princely class is a class of warriors, and that is why, as I mentioned earlier, the emperors dressed themselves in military garb up till recently. Emperor Haile Selassie or the Kaiser of Germany or whomever, pick your emperor. And you go back and they were actually one and the same. Alexander, Caesar, these people, right? They had their breastplate on. That was the game that they were playing. Okay? You want to get status amongst these people here? This is what you have to demonstrate. And the barons back in the day, okay, the people whom were over the peasants would take the most risk. They were responsible for protecting, quote unquote, the peasants on a smaller scale now, not at the emperor level. But that was the idea. The nobility, the aristocracy, and that is generally what we talk about when we talk about the nobility and aristocracy out here generally in the West, is we're talking about the warrior prince class. Okay? They are one and the same. They play the honor, patriotism, valor, risk. This is Sparta game. That is that game. That's how they're rolling. That's what they bring to the table. Those are the measures that they are judged by. So if you're playing that I'm hella alpha game, well, these are the sets of things you're going to need to demonstrate. Okay? Are you a Marine general like Mad Dog Mattis? Well, if you're not, maybe you need to shut up. Because just saying it, not paying the price that is required, and trying to bestow upon yourself this princely warrior alpha crap without paying the price is just stupid. So, shout out to the super chatter already. And by the way, oh yes, Io Deo Joe also did super chat early. He super chatted like 3 hours ago before the stream even started. That was thank you very much. Thank you very much. And you super chatting again. Okay, another $20. Much appreciated. $40 now. Okay. You see that, Snuggles? Snuggles, the $5 champion. He says, great topic, very insightful, and I've personally struggled with what hierarchy I would like to climb. Oh, we will get into it. You would have to look at it. We talked in a previous stream about motivations. Are you intrinsically motivated? You're extrinsically motivated. We talk about why you exist. What is the story? These here are the sets of stories to discover about yourself. And that is why I specifically use the word discover. You don't go and choose a hierarchy. No. You discover it about yourself. Especially in modern times in a democracy, because there are personalities that are best suited for it. It may be in the past that you were born into a family, but even then, it was well known, okay, who the warrior was and who the scholar would be, and so on and so forth. I mean, we know about the Godfather, or we know about the Kennedy family, for example. There is a selection process. There is the best suited individual in that family that says, okay, this is going to be the one. This is the chosen one. We're going to send him to the military. He's going to become our warrior prince. You will be the scholar. Right? But in modern day democracy, we have the responsibility to actually look within ourselves to find out, to discover the particular sets of hierarchies that we're playing in and how we order them. Because the ordering of hierarchies is also important. Very important. Very, very, very important. Moseman says, I love elbow patches. Shout out to Young Swift in the house. Shout out to Sir Tice in the house. Shout out to Tivana Perry in the house. Always, always, always nice to see you one and all. And we have Snuggles with the first $5 super chat of the evening. And by the way, Mr. Io, you get sponsor status. Yes, you give up at least $20, you get sponsor status. Today's show is brought to you by Io Adeojo. Straight out of Canada, straight out of Canada, straight out of Canada. And Snuggles says, did you try to call me out, Ike? Don't you test my gangster, sir. $5 in full effect, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very, very much. Yes, the politicians are meant to be in the prince class, and that's why we said that, in other words, let me put it this way, okay? These categories, these archetypes are already out there. You simply have to go and try to fit yourself into it so that you can get the status. The politicians always sent their children to military, or they are military people themselves, right? So the Kennedys, Send them to military school. But part of the story is how they fought with honor. George Bush Sr., same thing. It's only recently. But even it even still is a question, even in recent times. Like, well, what is your military service? And the warrior prince are one and the same thing, because we look back into time and that's just the same crew. They are literally one and the same person. Right? Caesar, emperors. And even the emperors that were not, they were playing that game. That's why they dressed themselves up that way. In other words, you have to pick, even if you are not completely worthy, you have to pick the particular trappings, or at least the aesthetic coverings, in order to portray that you belong. To answer your question, sir. And shout out to you, Doug, for another $5. Shout out to you for your $5, sir. So, we know what the merchants are about, okay? They're about prudence, frugality, industriousness, and a certain kind of order. The order that allows for free exchange, open borders, okay? They're about whatever is good for trade. They don't like wars, okay? The whole let's fight about, you see the other two on top? The two that are on top there, the priests are about their truth, and the warrior about the valor and the honor and all that stuff. They tend to cause a lot of fighting. Down here, the merchants, they don't like that stuff. War is not good for trade unless you're part of the military industrial complex. That's a different, whole new crazy modern phenomenon. When the war became mechanized, and the merchants found a way to capitalize on war. But generally speaking, let's keep it neat, let's keep it simple, okay? This is not a political science course. We are trying to do this for our own benefit, for our own selves, so that we can discover our own hierarchies, and so that we cannot conflate and confuse and say conflicting things all the time, which tends to happen, right? Peace, prudence, frugality, industriousness, the work ethic. That's what this crew is about. That's how they're measured, okay? Money in the bank, money saved, businesses that stay alive, trade, industriousness, inventiveness of a certain kind. This is what this crew is about. These are the archetypes, the characters in the story from which these values are drawn, or the exemplars of the values. I believe that the story and the character and the archetypes are primary. Because before you can come up with concepts, first you have to be alive. The species has to exist. Things have to actually happen before people say, hey, these are values worth pursuing. These archetypes are actual people, stories of people. Archetypes that embody, or that we embody whenever we try to claim a spot in any particular hierarchy. And we have to understand what it means. How about the artist? What's the artist about? Dr. Thunder, can you occupy one at a time? Of course. But as I said earlier, As I said earlier, can you be the wise pope who also leads armies into war, been fighting since you were 16, and write great poetry while also running a Fortune 500 company. And this is not a question of the time. And let me know, Dr. Thunder, if I am being clear here. This is not a question of, oh, well, of course you can't do that. You don't have the time to. It's not about that. Some of these things are just purely contradictory. If you look at the list of values over there, some of them are purely contradictory to each other. Okay? When you talk about honor, pride, valor, and taking risk, well, that's not necessarily great for the priestly values. Might not be great for business to be fighting out about, whose God is right and wrong, right? In other words, it's not just a question of not having the time or the capacity to do it all. That is true as well. But they are contradictory in certain regards. But these are all values. They represent themselves all through different societies. And that's why they tend to be separated out. Yes, everybody occupies several, but you need to find out, and we'll get to it later, how you order them, because every individual and societies also in general order these. So it's not a question of, I'm going to be a warrior. It's a question of also, where is the warrior ranked within my society? So it's not a question of, I have, when you take it to the individual level now, I have prudence and Protestant work ethic, but is that the highest value for me? Or are the priestly values the highest for me, even though I am participating in all of these simultaneously? And yes, there are conflicts of interests, just plain, simple conflicts of interest. Shout out to the God-fearing king in the house. Today, we're going to disabuse ourselves of the notion that hierarchy is hierarchy is hierarchy. That you're going to use your alpha valor crap to try to trump this other guy who's talking about money. You're going to talk about how spiritual and great and holy you are when someone is talking about valor or something, It's like, we need to be clean, we need to be precise, we need to understand. And then we need to go in and discover our sets of hierarchies and how they are ordered. So it's a simple conversation, really. Sebastian has a very interesting point here. And we'll get to that when we talk about how the hierarchies are ordered. Okay? Different societies will put one particular class on top. And it is true that many societies have always put the sage, scholar, priest on top. The Brahmins are on top in India, for example. Okay? They're on top. Snuggles. Felicia says, I find it funny that merchant is replaced with the lower in masculine archetype. Yes, generally speaking, especially talking about ages and years of evolution, does make sense that the merchant type and his love for peace and order of a certain kind and his concerns with the values of the stomach, in the way Nietzsche would put it, will be seen as not very masculine, right? But the really heady types, which would be like the sages and such, and also the warrior type for sure, there's no need to question the masculinity of the warrior type. So everyone else outside of them will need to justify, when we're talking about masculinity now, generally speaking, you need to justify why they are masculine. Snuggles. Did the Brahmins fight their way on top? Or manipulate their way to the top? Do you know how, the story of Saudi Arabia in broad stroke, Snuggles? Let me get a 1 if you know how the House of Saud made a deal with the Wahhabi set of Islam. So the Wahhabi set of Islam will now be representing, in this case, the scholar, sage type, the House of Saud, the warrior prince type, okay? The House of Saud in Saudi Arabia, right? And do you get the point of how I'm answering your question there? The point is, you do need the warrior, sage, the holder, the curator of values, if you will, of spiritual values. You do need them if you are going to be controlling a population. The warriors cannot just put a collective chain around the necks of people and rule. But basically speaking, you need a collaboration between these two. And it tends to be the case that the sage types on that bargaining table can put themselves on top of the warrior types without contradiction, because they want different things. And it is easy for the warrior types, the warrior prince type in this, the House of Saud, this particular one individual now that I'm talking about, who started this kingdom in Arabia. He wants different things from what these other people want. So he says, hey, you control the people. You get to write all the laws, and you get to, I just want the power of a separate kind, of a different kind. So they have different ends. So it does tend to be the case that when these pacts are made in this particular way, the sages are a little bit on top, because controlling the population tends to be primary, so that the warrior class, the princely warrior class, can do their thing. But that is very broad strokes, simplified way of answering your questions. So, the artist is about expression, okay? That is the top of the artist hierarchy. Expressing the culture, okay? And they express the culture for everybody. They express the culture of the warrior, of the sage, of the scholar, of the merchants even, to the degree to which there's anything interesting to be expressed in the merchant class. No shade to the merchant class. They give us iPhones and order. If you left it all to the priests and the warriors, we'll be fighting all the time about truth, honor, purity, values, God, and patriotism, and taking risk, and this is Sparta, and how dare you, and let's go out and fight a duel, right? Expression of culture, openness, and creativity is key here. The artists tend to also be the ones to perpetuate, okay, a particular order, a particular hierarchy, okay? You want the artist to make plays. You want the artist to organize bread and circuses for the people. They paint the paintings, and in this particular case, they are perpetuating a particular kind of hierarchy, or they could be the ones to overturn it and create space for new kinds of things to overturn. Because hierarchies do get rigid and they do need to be flipped from time to time because they tend to get corrupt. They tend to get corrupt. Okay? Due to entropy, due to the fact that, okay, you get a Genghis Khan, the original warrior prince. He goes and he conquers. And then what happens next? You get the administrator types. And then you get maybe the philosopher types. And then it starts going away from the original sets of values which created the kingdom in the first place. Things maybe become too legalistic and structured and rigid. And the systems that have been instantiated and implemented no longer reflect the original goals for which they were instituted. And so on and so on and so on. But you guys get the picture, right? Let me get a 1 if we now clearly understand the interplay here. And if we already are beginning to see how it actually affects us, let me get a 1 in the chat if we now can clearly understand that, hey, these different value structures are from different archetypes. They represent a different storyline of different people that don't mix money values with sage values. You have to play with one or the other. Or at least when you're mixing them, you know that you're mixing them. And when somebody tells you about money, don't go, oh, but it doesn't make me happy. And when somebody tells you about, well, we live in capitalist America, and this is what a high value man is. And then you talk about, oh, well, how about my spiritual whatever? And it's like, dude, you can go play that game where people play that game over there with the rest of you people. And if you have rank amongst that group, you don't need to tell us about it. Nobody needs to be coming here announcing whatever it is, whatever the measures of your particular position in a particular hierarchy, it should be known within that hierarchy. You should not be coming out telling me about your spiritual whatever. If you want to really play that game, go become a monk. Or be a sage, wise man, get an elbow patch, get a big library, become a philosopher, whatever it is. But don't challenge when people talk about money or something else. Don't go bringing the virtues, the values of some other group to challenge this group. It is just silly. It doesn't even make sense. It is very contradictory. But people do it all the time. Out of emotional reasons, which is horrible. This dominance hierarchy games tend to be male-dominated type of games because it is for men to go out there and rank themselves. And generally speaking, women come and try to take from the top of the hierarchy. They're like, I'm a sapiosexual. I'm going to go for the best scholar sage type, okay? Or, you know what? I really like them alphas. I'm going to go I'm going to go... But you get my point, okay? You get my point. And shout out to Sebastian for the $5 super chat. Let's get that on the screen. Shout out to Sebastian for the $5 super chat. He says, appreciate you and the gold content. So, the wealthy firefighter says the merchant class appeals to the most. You got wealthy in your name, so I guess we know where you stand. King Solomon is definitely a sage type, okay? So what was the story? What was one of the morals of the story or stories about King Solomon is that he asked God for wisdom. And this is part of going to Snuggles' point about how come, or what is what exactly is the deal with the sage types? What do they bring to the table? I think it's kind of obvious. And if you could just encapsulate it and put it into the one story of King Solomon, who said, when God said, hey, I'll give you anything, what did he say? He said, give me wisdom. Because with that one thing, you can kind of, to put it in Snuggles' way, manipulate your way to getting the ranking that you're looking for, the status that you're looking for. It is a very powerful one, okay? That wisdom one is very powerful. God-fearing King says, know and play your position. So let's talk about the common ways now. Let's talk about the common ways in which, people conflict and conflate the different hierarchies, okay? Because this is something that people do all the time, and this is one of the main reasons of me creating this particular stream. I was thinking yesterday, like, after I heard for the nth time somebody do the, you know what, let me wait and just go through the list. But the conflating and conflicting of these different hierarchies is a pet peeve of mine. So let's talk about Kevin Samuels' high value man definition. And let's talk about all the pushback that he gets. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen in the chat, do you already see where this is going? Do you already see where this is going? Yeah, Young Swift, high value. It is a never-ending conversation because of a fundamental error, category error that people make. Io says, oh, I see. Where is Kevin Samuels' high value man? Which particular dominance hierarchy game? Which particular category is that person in? Let me get the answer in the chat. Let me get the answer in the chat before we even start. Which game is that person playing? Let me go ahead, for those of you who do not know, because not everyone is part of the conversation, right, of this, what Kevin Samuel said. Let me go ahead and enumerate what Kevin Samuel said. Let me tell you why it makes perfect sense and why it is in a particular, you have to talk about a particular hierarchy. Money, okay? And he put it in dollars. He says at least $10,000 a month, given, talking about Atlanta dollars. And then you got to adjust up over here in Silicon Valley. It's probably like $18,000 a month or something, right? And money for a particular period of time, not money that fell off a truck, okay? But money that you have consistently made for a particular period of time, visibility, acceptance in the group, usefulness to the group, and so on and so forth. Where does that land? We just looked at the hierarchy groups already. We already looked at is this a prince? Is this a warrior? Is this a sage? Who is this person? Who is this person? How should they be judged? Young Swift, merchant, yes. And then people come out of the blue and say, hey, how about my sage-like values? It's like, well, that's a different category. And the sage-like values tend not to come out and argue with merchants, by the way. It's a total contradiction. These people over here concerned with truth, purity, intellectualism, spirituality. You don't come out and argue with merchants about their hierarchy system. Like, why? It's total opposite of sage-like behavior to begin with. So obviously the people who say things like that are not sages, right? The people who give the pushback. I know it is not very easy for all kinds of personality types to keep neat categories because some people like to blend things together. I understand that it's not just an intellectual thing, it's a personality thing as well. Okay? 100%. No smoke, no heat, no judgment. There is a certain kind of personality that is high in order, whereby they can keep neat categories. But there's some people, more people as a matter of fact, tend to want to blend things together. So that if Kevin Samuel comes out and says, hey, high value man, we're living in modern day capitalist America, by the way. Okay, so it's not like it's crazy for somebody to come out and talk about merchant values, right? It's not insane, okay? It's not insane. So he goes and he gives those, and then people come out from Sage World, people come out from Warrior World and say, hey, how about my alpha? I'll alpha my way through. High value doesn't make you alpha. I'm the warrior prince. This is Sparta. When it was clearly understood about these different classes and castes and so on and so forth, they don't go arguing with each other. You don't go arguing with each other. The warrior doesn't go and start fighting the merchant about, no, I'm, you can't. It's like, it's a different world. You guys didn't see this coming, huh? But ever since this argument started, this was the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, oh my God, again with the category errors. As Dr. Thunder alluded to earlier, we all have to participate in all these different categories. But we all, as we'll get to later, have to order them. But we all need to not make the messy mistake of bleeding them into each other. It's just messy. It's not intellectually honest. And it shows a certain kind of emotionality. Okay? Exactly, Sir Tice. Alpha your way through it. It shows a certain kind of emotionality. It's like somebody's over there talking about his commerce, and you feel the need to run down from your monastery to tell him that, no, how about my books? You didn't talk about my books. How about my books? It's like, nigga, no one was talking about your books to begin with. You can make a video about your books. You can talk about scholarly, priestly virtues. You can talk about warrior, princely virtues. Or you can talk about the artist virtues, which is more about creativity and independence and openness and being able to flip the hierarchy and being able to express the culture. These things are contradictory. You do not mix. Stop mixing them. It is a sign of lack of culture. I see what you did there, Young Swift. So, you are correct, and we now see that these are merchant values, okay? Do not conflict or conflate the hierarchies. In a modern day capitalistic system, it is not crazy for somebody to be talking about merchant values. And you don't have to say anything about it, because all they're talking about is merchant values. They did not even say that that was the highest value. They're saying that in merchant values, in a capitalist system, by the way, also, whether you kind of like it or not, that here you go. Generally accepted, most vastly understood. Another example of how people tend to make this category error, and this is a big one, okay? This one you should pound out of your head. If you do this, you need to stop it as soon as possible, because anybody with some understanding of the mistake you're making is highly disappointed in you when you do this thing. Let me get a one in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Let me get a one in the chat. Snuggles and Felicia and Young Swift, if you understand what the money happiness fallacy is, if you understand and see where this is already going. Do you know about this particular non sequitur? Do you know about this particular thing people love to do? They do it so often it becomes a normal thing. It becomes popular conversation. People actually sit down and talk about it seriously. Do you know that quite often when people say money, the first thing some people like to say is, well, but money doesn't make you happy. Jesus Christ! What do they have to do with each other? Money is a tool. It's like me saying, hey, this tool called shovels is the best for digging holes, okay? Digging holes is the goal. So let's talk about shovels. Well, you know, shovels don't make you happy. Yeah, shovels don't make you happy, bro. Nigga, we digging holes. I don't even need to elaborate upon the psychological reason why people do that. You already know. And by people, I mean you, me, all of us. Over here, we keep it real over here, right? We're real with ourselves. This is about understanding ourselves. When somebody does that kind of a shift, brings up something that is completely unrelated, but they actually think it's related, there is an emotional reason, a psychological reason why. Right? It is a 100% non sequitur. It is 100% BS. I'm talking about shovels and you're telling me about happiness. Money is a tool, a measure of value and a medium of exchange. I don't care if it's in dollars or in gold or in cell phone minutes or in cryptocurrency. We need this very important tool. You cannot get rid of it. We need to measure value and exchange. Stop talking about happiness when you talk about this tool. To me, it actually sounds like you're crazy. And to anyone now that just sees the way I just kind of laid down some premises here, it should be very clear to you too that this is actually insane. It's like you've lost your mind. Shout out to Joe Kemery, Joe for the $5 super chat. He says, peace, brother Ike. Exactly, Dr. Thunder. And nigga, we digging holes. Just imagine somebody, you start talking about the tools for digging holes and they start talking about happiness. Or, you know, that shovel, well, that backhoe doesn't make you happy. It's like, I have this better other tool here. It's like, that tool's not... Bruh, you're so far gone in your emotional problems. You're so far gone with your insecurities and your reasons why you're scared of money or ashamed about money. Whatever it is, you're just showing yourself. It's a big tell. Stop doing it. It is a massive tell. I'm not the only one out there, okay? There are people who actually understand. There are people who actually know these things. And whenever you come out and you start talking about money or happiness, when people talk about money, it's a big red flag that there's something wrong with you. Happiness, perhaps, may be towards the sage-like, wisdom-like end of things. Happiness, perhaps, in the context of this channel, is more related to mastery of our subjective consciousness, meditation, equanimity, sensory clarity, being able to not be in a situation where the tail is wagging the dog, being in that observer mode, being in flow state. Happiness, perhaps, is more related to that. It has nothing to do with this tool. So stop conflating the two. It shows a deep lack of understanding and a lot of insecurity on your part, and you need to beat it out of your head. Not to mention, it's just purely illogical and very irrational. And to me, I literally hear it like I'm telling you about shovels and you start telling me about happiness. That's how I actually hear it. And I don't know why more people don't hear it that way. I know why. It's a media thing. It's because people repeat it. It's because we've been brainwashed. Somebody somewhere who probably doesn't want you to have any money, who doesn't want you to have this tool, okay, who wants to keep all the shovels to themselves. Somebody wants to keep all the damn shovels to themselves, and they keep telling you to talk about happiness whenever shovels are brought up. We need shovels. Stop listening to the people who tell you to talk about happiness when we're talking about shovels. A very important tool because, as Dr. Thunder said, nigga, we digging holes. Shout out, shout out, shout out, shout out, shout out. Niger gang, no they carry last. Indeed. Keep speaking facts, he says. Sika Inyang in the house. Yes, all kinds of organs of influence, maybe the church, maybe the government, right? Keep gaslighting you with this thing. They keep gaslighting you and telling you, you know what? Why do you want so many shovels? Why don't you, you know what? The shovels are not going to make you happy. You know, why don't you give away your shovels? And it's crazy, dude. I want it to be very clear. That's why I'm dwelling on this. After this, I want it to be very clear to you that is anyone going to deny that money is a tool? Because we need to put it on the table. Is money some kind of spiritual thing, or is it not a measure of value and a means of exchange? The story of money is this: you and I in an island, okay? You do different things, I do different things, but there's one thing that we can denominate all our value in. I raise potatoes, you make shoes. I want your shoes, but you don't want my potatoes. But there's this thing called cell phone minutes, for example, that we all use. So we denominate everything in cell phone minutes. So cell phone minutes is our money, or salt is our money, or gold is our money. It's a tool. It's a way for me to go to you and say, hey, I want some shoes. I know you don't want any potatoes, but don't worry, because I got cell phone minutes, because I can sell my potatoes for cell phone minutes anywhere, and I just simply transfer, doop, 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 cell phone minutes, I get my shoes. Because without it, it's called the double coincidence of wants, not to get into an economics lecture, but it is a tool. I'm making it very clear, in other words, that this thing here, this magical thing that people like to bring all kinds of non sequiturs about, is just a tool. And it arises from the story that I just told you. I want your shoes, but you don't want my potatoes. But there is something that we can denominate all value in. It may be salt, it may be gold, it may be cell phone minutes, but we can all just pass that thing around, right? So we don't have to worry about what you want, what I want. We can pass it around. Very useful tool, and people start talking about happiness. Imagine if, we're doing this cell phone minutes thing, and you and me, not Alan, somebody's like, these cell phone minutes are going to be, oh my God. Don't do it, folks. And I don't care about how much money you may want or not want, right? I don't care about the dominance game that you're playing. You may be indeed on top of your hierarchy is sage, and then next to that is artist, and everything. There's a sharp drop below. I don't care about that, but don't fall for the trickery. Don't listen to the people who tell you to give up your shovels because shovels don't make you happy. Nigga, we're digging holes, man. This has nothing to do with happiness. Holes are very important to practical survival. Why are you telling me about happiness? Why are you trying to get me to give up my shovels? Shout out to good men in the house. Shout out to good men in the house. So there's a couple of examples of, the ways in which these category errors get made as a result of not understanding that they're different hierarchy games because they're actually different people. These archetypes are different people. That warrior is different from the sage, he's different from the merchant, and he's different from the artist. These people are pursuing different ends measured by different yardsticks. Stop conflating them because of your insecurities. It is, especially if you're a man, okay? Because for us men, hierarchy is even more important. Way, way, way more important. The emotional need to be accepted across all hierarchies is a big problem. We started this talk talking about this great Pope, wise man, sage, who's been a warrior since he was 16. So now he's also a general, and he's a captain of a Fortune 500 business, and is the greatest playwright that ever existed. We are saying that the fact that that person cannot exist is not just a question of not having the time. It's a question because a couple of these things are very contradictory to each other. The Renaissance man, okay, even the Renaissance man has a ranking of his particular hierarchy games that he is playing. Okay? So, if you're the involuntary celibate incel type or someone who likes to complain about looks, money, status all the time, and why does women don't want me? Looks, money, status, and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, and yeah, Ike, it's easy for you to say you're 6'4", you're looking sharp over there. But there are other hierarchy games you can play completely circumventing that whole thing. You cannot expect to be accepted or play at the highest levels across all hierarchies. And that's why, again, I say, especially if you're a man, number one, because that's where the hierarchy thing is more important. And also because you need to stop bitching already. Because nobody wants to hear it. Okay? No one is interested. No one is coming to save you. Nobody cares. Find another lane. Find another hierarchy game. Go be a sage. Become Einstein. Something. Jesus Christ. Don't make these category errors, gentlemen. Don't do it. Do not do it. So, Now we've kind of had a lay of the land, ladies and gentlemen. Again, just a quick recap, people coming in newly, I know, okay? We're talking about discovering your hierarchies, and we haven't gotten to the part where we're digging into ourselves to find out what exactly is the lane that we tend to play in, and how do we rank order these particular lanes. So far, we've just kind of introduced the hierarchies, okay? There's the hierarchy of the sage, priest, wise man type, okay? He values, or they over there, rank themselves based on purity and knowledge, holiness, if you will. They give up certain material things. That's what they tend to pay for admission and for getting rank. You have the warrior, prince type, the types that conquer and rule, okay? They have to take on the responsibility of taking more risk. The generals and the princes used to fight from the front. We know about the Napoleon and the Alexander and the Caesars and so on and so forth. A lot of Roman emperors died from violence and poisoning and so on and so forth. It was part of the life. The warrior prince life is you live dangerously, you live by the sword, and you die by the sword. The story of the sword of Damocles. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? The sword of Damocles. There is a sword hanging by a single hair of a horse's tail above the king's head. It could fall anytime. And someone was thinking, hey, you know what? I bet it would be great to be the king. And they're like, really? Do you want this? Do you want this? Okay. More or less got the position and realized, oh, there is a sword hanging by a single horse's hair over my head. That's the game that the warrior prince plays. And then we have the merchant class. They value prudence, industriousness, the work ethic. They want peace. They don't want all this fighting that the priests tend to instigate and that the warriors just can't wait to have, right? They're like, whoa, 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 whoa. You guys need to chill. We need to trade. Okay? We need to fill our stomachs. We need life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We need some democracy, blah, blah, blah. Hence, modern day liberal democracy / capitalist societies. The modern political project, if you will. Shout out once again to a Full Circle Essentials in the house with that $5 super chat. Says, Ike. Well, shout out to you. Shout out to you, sir. Shout out to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have introduced the different categories and we've talked about how people tend to make category mistakes. It was exemplified in this particular space when Kevin Samuels came out with his obviously merchant class value system, which is not crazy to be saying in modern day capitalistic society after all. Let's not pretend like we don't know where we are, okay? And he says, hey, okay, there are virtues that are required to be in this particular category, okay? He did not talk about the virtues. He's talking about the parameters by which we measure, okay? It also tends to be the case, by the way, that the merchant class has an advantage in terms of their rank is very easy to measure. Let me get a 1 in the chat if you understand what I'm saying, okay? The merchant class has one advantage. It is this, and it's this. Their particular value system, their hierarchy is easy to measure. There's not a lot of ambiguity. Let me get a 1 in the chat if you know what I mean. There's not a lot of ambiguity. For example, the priest holy man type. Okay, who am I to know whether you're going to heaven or not? Who am I to know whether you're truly a wise sage? Okay, maybe you're just pretending. Maybe you're plagiarizing when it comes to the aspect of intellectual pursuits. But when it comes to the aspect of purity and so on and so forth, how do I really know? And how do I really know you're alpha like that? You're not a Marine general, especially in modern times, right? But guess what? Kevin Samuel comes out and he says, hey, after all, we are in modern day capitalism. And after all, the merchant class values has this very clear advantage of being able to be measured. And it says, hey, money, at least 10 grand a month. Adjust it for where you are. You're in the Bay Area? Well, sucks for you. You need more. You need to have made it for a certain period of time. Why? Because it takes those virtues, which we talked about, the prudence, the work ethic, the conscientiousness, the industriousness, the consistency to make that money for 5 years. You need to be useful to the group. That means you're not a bastard, right? That means you're not somebody that just came in and undercut other people. In other words, other people accept you as one of them. You are visible also. You're not hiding behind the scenes. You're not selling drugs out of your trunk. He enumerates these things, and people come out. All of a sudden, they're coming out from their monasteries somewhere where they have never been and start talking about, how about my spiritual values? That's not what makes you high value. How about my alpha? And how about my, my holiness? And it's a different category, bro. And by the way, in those categories, they don't talk about it. Holy men don't come out talking about how holy they are. Yeah, no, it's not how it rolls. Okay. And if you're going for the intellectual side of the holy man group, yeah, show me your dissertation. Where's your Nobel Prize? Show me your Nobel Prize. Stop telling me, stop coming in here talking about, the money doesn't. It's like, get out of here. It makes zero sense. So these are some of the ways in which people make this category mistake. And yes, I get heated with stuff like this because to me, you got to understand how I see it. To me, it's always very obvious and clear. It's very transparent to me. I see the overcompensation. I see the insecurity that causes it to happen. And then I also see the logical fallacy very clearly. It's crazy to me. Especially the money happiness one. Like, hey, here's some shovels. These shovels here are better than that, okay? Maybe you're talking about your Bitcoin and how it's better money than, that other thing over there. And then somebody comes up with a better money, like a backhoe. And yeah, we're digging holes. And you start talking about happiness. Bro, we're digging holes. Nobody said anything about happiness. Why are you even talking about happiness? We have holes to dig. You expose yourself when you do things like that. Think about these things that are being said. I am being rhetorical. In other words, I am trying to make the point by emphasis, by humor. But because it is a very serious point, so now let's go into the aspect where we try to figure out, okay, for ourselves, okay? Oh, that's a horrible misspelling over there. That was supposed to be the hierarchy of hierarchies. Okay, there's supposed to be a Y over here. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen, for the typo. I will blame my eyesight for that one, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with me, so my apologies. The hierarchy of hierarchies. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that all different systems and also all individuals need to rank these different hierarchies because, as Dr. Thunder very astutely noted in the very beginning, is that, well, we all kind of participate in all of these. No one is a complete non-wise person, non-sage person, non-pure value, spiritual consciousness-driven type person, right? And also people do need some valor, risk-taking, patriotism, responsibility. In other words, the values of the princely class. And obviously we do need to have some prudence and conscientiousness, commercial class type stuff. And maybe we need creativity too to be able to enjoy our lives and do what we do. But different societies will need to rank these. Whom is on top? We talked about the Wahhabi Islamic sect, and their tie with the House of Saud. The House of Saud, Saudi Arabia, they formed the nation. They're obviously the warrior prince class. They come in and they conquer. But they need the sage class because the minds of the people needs to be, the story, okay? The archetypes, the consciousness of the people need to be governed, controlled, right? So if we take, for example, the Indian caste system, this is how they rank it, okay? Sage on top. The Brahmins are on top. That's how they did it. Not so surprising, because what makes us human, for the most part, is our consciousness, right? And if you're going to control this weird animal called human, it is different from just, putting this little fence around him. You want to put a mental fence. It's a consciousness fence. Okay. So, sage, priest, scholar called the Brahmins. The Brahmins. They're on top. And then you have the warrior prince. No big surprise, right? After all, we do need defending, and we do need maybe to do some conquering. Maybe some blood needs to be spilled from time to time. So here, warrior prince, that's typically the deal, okay? Most ancient societies, that's kind of how it rolled. These two were always on top, okay? And then you have the merchant, and then below that you have the workers, untouchables, so on and so forth. But this is the order, okay? So, number one, we need to understand the different hierarchy games. We need to understand that they are contradictory because these are different people, literally different people pursuing different ends. The warrior is concerned with his honor and his valor, and they are the ones that do duels. Duels were not done by everybody. It was not done by the lower classes. It was done by the warrior prince class, which we typically would call the aristocracy. Okay? And priests were not dueling either, because their particular set of values didn't have to do with that. They did not have to prove their honor and their valor. Is this clear? Why do I have rank? Okay, well, am I a scholar writing great books, a sage in the temple, a holy man, a representation of these values? Okay, I pay certain things like giving up of material possessions, aesthetic lifestyle, so on. So, okay, that's my payment. If I'm going to be the warrior prince aristocracy type, be a gentleman, right? Then my honor is number one. You cannot sully my honor. We now have to go kill ourselves. That is why I am accorded the value that I'm given, okay? Also, I have to take the biggest risk. I have to fight in the front line. I have to protect the serfs, to be a baron, right? That's why these are very different people playing different games, okay? But then societies rank them. Now, modernity, generally speaking, is the overthrow of the priests. Sorry again for the typo. It's not the priesta. It's supposed to be the priests. The priests and the warriors were overthrown by the merchants. And here we are, modern day capitalism. Looking from a purely economic standpoint, the modern political project, call it enlightenment, is largely about replacing the priests and the warriors. In other words, the kings and the churches. And if you notice, it is a almost 180, as a matter of fact, direct 180. So if you look at ancient Indian caste system, well, it's not ancient. The caste system is the caste system. It's just a question of how much it is being observed, but the caste system hasn't changed. It's still the same thing in India, right? 180 flip. Do you notice the 180 flip that was done in our modern times? Complete flip. The money is on top now. The commerce is on top. The freedom of exchange. You can call it life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You could call it that. But really it's about leave me alone and I'll leave you alone. Don't talk to me about your purity and your God and the pureness of your truth. Let's stop with all this honor and all this stuff. Let's stop killing each other over gods and stuff like that. We need to start trading and feeding ourselves. The economic face, again, because I understand that there are many faces to any particular revolution, many faces to any particular political project, okay? But the economic face, broad strokes speaking, of modernity is the overthrow of the priest and the warrior class by the merchants. Is that clear? Can I please get a 1 in the chat just to make sure that I'm communicating here? Is that clear? Let me please get a 1 in the chat. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We look at one example of some ancient caste system, and then now we look at the modern system and we understand the story, right? There are many lines to the story. There's a philosophical line to the story. There's the Galileo didn't want the church bothering him or whatever, that whole line. There's an intellectual philosophical line. There's an economic line. There's a technological line. But if you take strictly the economic line, you can paint a broad stroke that just simply says that the merchants took over. The merchants have taken over, ladies and gentlemen. And that is why, again, whether you like it or not, it's not crazy that somebody would be talking in a society where the merchants rule, capitalist, liberal democracy, where things are it's all about trade zones and trade agreements, and it's just trade. It's not crazy that somebody living in this particular times and also using, or shall I say, would emphasize the merchant values. And also because if you're going to give a measure to people, you're going to give the one that's measurable. How can I measure your alpha, bro? If you want to talk about this warrior prince type stuff. We don't do duels anymore. If you want to reinstitute that, and if we want to get alpha that way, yeah, maybe we can do that. But let's be reasonable. And if you are really going to be arguing about merchant class type values, or shall I say, if you're really alpha, you would not be saying anything about how alpha you were or talking smack about the merchant. Okay? Just imagine the 300, those warriors of Sparta. Were they going to argue in the market with the money changer about, nah, man, you can't say that you don't deserve. It's like, bro, you are recognized by your particular cohort of people playing your particular hierarchy game by the rules of that game. Don't start bringing your I'm a holy man, how about my values and my spirituality when people are talking about merchant class values, because you just look stupid. And shout out to another super chat in the house. Very, very much appreciated. If I am not mistaken, let me go ahead and see if I can read that one. Oh, it's Jonathan in the house. Here's my cut. Oh, okay. I'll take it for now. I think I need a few more zeros, because I know you were loading some heavy bricks in that trunk of yours. Don't go, yeah. Spiritual Logic in the house says, what's up? He says, what's up, Ike? So, this is the rank ordering, okay, of societies. Now we're coming to the part where we have to then turn to ourselves. Hopefully, we have been able to clearly, shall I say, understand. We've not been able to elucidate and illuminate the landscape of the various hierarchies, see that they're very quite separate categories and separate archetypes. Picture the warrior prince with his breastplate and his sword. Picture the sage monk, scholar, with his robes and his book. Picture the merchant. These are different people. They play by different rules of the game. And these are the archetypes that represent our value structure. These are the storylines by which we judge ends that are worth pursuing. Don't mix them up. Don't mix them up. And another $5 super chat. I know green means $5. Red sings the blues. My donation. Ike, he says, thank you very much. You guys should definitely go check out Red Sings the Blues channel, ladies and gentlemen. You guys should definitely go check it out. Omega Dreads in the house. Omega Dreads in the house. Always making valid points. Always making valid points in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Always making valid points. So, what is your hierarchy of hierarchies? And I managed to spell it correctly this time. And notice this is not about capacity. This is about value. Now we're going into ourselves and we're understanding and we're asking ourselves, and perhaps we'll not be able to answer it in one fell swoop. This will not be something that will be easily ascertained. This is a continuation, ladies and gentlemen, of our Storyville talk. Okay, we live in Storyville. There is a story of a merchant. There's a story of a sage. There is a story of a warrior. There's a story of what it means to be successful in each and every one of these. Okay? What would Jesus do? Is what we ask ourselves when we're in that priestly hierarchy game, trying to ascertain a certain action that we need to take that is consonant with those values. And you could ask also, what would Alexander do? What would General George Patton do? Right? Get the picture? But it is not about whether or not you have a capacity to be a warrior. It's about whether it's valuable to you. And that's why you have to understand and perhaps go back and watch the video on why bother. It's a continuation, okay? There's a general theme to everything that I talk about because philosophy is one. Everything from mastery of subjective consciousness to Storyville to why bother to why you exist, all those videos. And I know it's not philosophy of that sense, but you get what I'm saying. Yes, the wisdom of Uncle Ike is one. Dare I say that myself? That's so cringe. Now, not about goals, but about motivation. It's not about whether or not you want world peace. It is, well, do you want world peace for money and so that you can exchange freely with people, so that you can continue to practice your industriousness and build more companies and that kind of a thing? Okay? What motivates you? Picture the person. I'll give my example. Okay? And as I said, this is not going to be a complicated stream. Well, I don't think it was complicated, right? This was one of our more straightforward ones. I just had to be emphatic and rhetorical in order to drive certain points across, because I think the major point to be gotten here is to stop making category errors. Stop making category errors. Shout out to Jesse Veal, the third. He is the third. No, not the first, not the second, not the fourth. Okay, you better get it right. He is Jesse Veal the third. He says, new subscriber here. Great content. Definitely something new and refreshing. Salute. Well, I am humbled. And thank you very much. Make sure that you share, you like the video, you hit the bell button, and you hit all. Like, subscribe, bell button, all. Yes, you already did the subscribe, right? Now make sure you do the bell button and the all. Okay? I see. Lots of interesting comments in the chat. Maybe somebody has something to say. Hold on one second. But I'm going to share my... Okay, what would you guys think is the top of my hierarchy? To the degree to which I can ascertain it so far. What would be your guess? To those of you who have been here stream after stream, and we've been having all kinds of conversations, all the way from how to be kind to your future self to, gentlemen, shut up and show your work, my pyramid system of time and energy management, all this and that and the other, to mastery of subjective consciousness, developing sensory clarity, equanimity, and concentration through meditation, so on and so forth. What would you guess, young Swift? What would you guess? Okay. What is on top of Ike's hierarchy? Is it the warrior thing, the sage thing, the priestly? Is it the merchant? Is it the artist? What is it? I thought it was hard. My bad. Apparently it's easy. Or maybe, wow, you're actually going on the rank. You're actually trying to go number 2, number 3. I mean, it could get a little difficult when after you go past number 1, because number 1 is usually the most important, and then it's hard to then rank the rest, because the battle gets a little stiff when you go that way, right? So let me go ahead and change the sharing and conclude this so that we can have a brief conversation here. Yes, you're right. Yes, you're right. Yes. I view myself as a monk type. Okay? I'm a sage type, a priest type, a scholar type, and I guess that was easy. I thought maybe it was a curveball, but Felicia got it. Scholar, merchant, prince. Yes, that is the right order. Sage, artist. Wow. Felicia. Felicia, you are a writer, huh? Yeah. You're over here psychoanalyzing me. Yes, I am also a master manipulator. Would a master manipulator tell you he was a master manipulator? Well, perhaps he will. Right? I am a master manipulator, and I teach master manipulation. At the highest levels, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, Felicia got it perfectly right. Top of my hierarchy is the scholarly pursuits. Those that have to do with values, those that have to do with consciousness. Number 1, consciousness is my thing. Call it spirituality if you will, but I hesitate strongly to use that word because many people don't know what it means. So I'd rather use the word consciousness, okay? And the things that go along with it, the use of the mind, the scholarly stuff, the philosophy, blah, 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 blah. Next is the artistry, openness, creativity, freedom, as you said, young Swift. So when you were using those other words, young Swift, you are correct. Sage, artist, creativity is key. And then we get to the merchant part. Okay? We get to the merchant part. Because even in my business ventures, I'm not a CEO type. I'm not a strategy type. I'm not a manager type. I'm an entrepreneur. And an entrepreneur is a creative. Okay? A Steve Jobs is a creative type. Okay? That's why they keep on. That's why, they're great marketers, great presenters, great master manipulators, right? Yeah. So the curators of the culture, the expressors of the culture. So about expression, about freedom, right? And then the merchant and then the warrior stuff is at the bottom for me. Again, this is not about capacity, it's about goals, it's about what motivates you. Okay? I don't feel great need to be defending my honor out there. I'd rather be by the fireplace with an elbow patch reading a book. And then maybe I write a song or two, make a YouTube video or two, cash some checks, and that warrior valor, I'm gonna alpha my way through whatever. You should be able to, in this very broad strokes way, have a rank ordering of these particular hierarchy systems that we discussed for yourself. So number one, understand these hierarchy systems. Understand that they're based on these archetypes, these people whom have very different goals, very different means to get there, very different ways of measuring what progress looks like. Okay, therefore don't make the category error. When Kevin Samuels talks about his high value man, understand, okay, he's in the merchant class, okay? And it makes perfect sense for somebody to be talking in modern day capitalism, where after all, the priests and the princes have been taken over by the merchants, to be talking about those values, okay? And I get it. And if I practice my sage stuff downstairs by my fireplace with my books and my pipe, that's for me to talk about, not for me to jump in like a monkey and start talking about, that's not what makes you high value. Or how about my alpha? It is very antithetical, if you understood what those value structures were, to be talking about those things even. Okay? A man of valor doesn't come out and say it by definition. Okay? And then thirdly, understanding that the hierarchies are ranked by different societies. We talked about how it was or still is in the ancient or the caste system of India and many other systems. Okay, it was sage and then warrior prince and then the merchant and then workers, and then it's been flipped recently. And then you need to then be able to go into yourself and say, where do I fit in here? Okay? So that was the point of this. And we have Dr. Thunder in the house, the resident whip, the whip of the chat, the honorable Dr. Thunder. How you doing?
Nigga, we digging holes. Okay.
You gonna make a t-shirt?
Yeah. I actually came up to also to promote our show that we're doing next week. It's going to be 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 6:30 Pacific Standard Time. And it's Getting Ish Done. It's going to be a productivity sort of show. And we're going to get into all kinds of really, really cool stuff. So if you're into that kind of thing, it's going to be I think it's going to be a really, really good show. And getting my research happening. So it's going to be good.
Well, you heard it here first. Hear he, come one, come all. Dr. Thunder and I will be doing a monthly show. Excuse me. It's called Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. And we got Charles Faulkner in the building. And he goes, woo! I think I got that right. But I didn't get the Ric Flair grunt into it. It's more like, woo! Yeah, there you go. You gotta get that. You gotta get that. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I got it now. Shout out to you. Thank you for the $5. Yes, so Dr. Thunder and I monthly, okay? I dropped it in my community tab. I will continue to drop it, and it's also on Facebook. Make sure you guys are here. We're going to be talking about how to get things done. Simple way, measurable ways, actionable ways, and our first topic. Can we go ahead and announce it? Huh?
Yeah, man. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's going to be on sloth, okay? One of the 7 deadly sins, that laziness, okay? That thing that you feel whenever you need to get up and do something. You need to start, you need to go to the gym. That thing that comes and crawls over you. You might even get to the gym, okay? All right? You might even get to the gym, but you're not able to do the workout. You just circle back and, you walk around. What is that thing, okay? What are the ways of overcoming it? What are the methodologies? What are the faces that it has? Because it's not just simple laziness. No. It's not just that feeling of gravity when you wake up in the morning and the alarm bell is going off and you're like, oh my God, why bother? No, it's way smarter than that, okay? Sloth will infiltrate your mind as well. It'll tell you to do other things rather than do the important thing. It's like, hey, how about we arrange this set of papers over here rather than start this? Hey, how about check these inconsequential emails over here rather than write the book which you've been trying to write for the past 15 years, right? We're going to be talking about sloth, ladies and gentlemen. That's going to be our first topic. And do you have anything else to add, Dr. Thunder, or on the topic, if you will, this topic today?
Yeah. So I mean, the first and most profound thing was, nigga, we digging holes, but uh, but so the occupying more than one hierarchy is an interesting sort of thing. And so for instance, you have folks like Reverend Al Sharpton. Now this is interesting, right? Because he's occupying two that don't really go together. Right? So supposedly he's a reverend. Of course, we don't know what church, he's the reverend that he's ministers at. But then he's also this sort of kind of a very clever and greasy, kind of corrupt sort of,
that's not how you really
always
feel.
appears. He kind of always appears when there's some kind of race baiting to do, and to sort of capitalize on that. I'm sure some folks will disagree with that assessment, that general assessment of him, depending on where they fall politically. But I think one thing that we can agree on is someone that's a reverend is supposed to, tell the truth, and that's a primary kind of thing, pursuing holiness and and even asceticism, right? Denying themselves things for the trying to achieve that higher, more lofty, that crown in heaven, that that thing that can't be quantified in earthly, with with money or with fame or with any of that, right? But then on the other hand, he's absolutely about fame, acquiring as many assets as he can with his fame, with his. So it's just it's interesting. You see these things all the time. I think we've become so used to this because there's a lot of this kind of stuff that happens in politics. So we sort of don't even look twice.
That is a very good point, and it is, as a matter of fact, one of the things that I had in mind when I decided to talk about this today, which is that if you're able to kind of discretize these categories in your mind and try to stay in your top one as much as possible, it actually helps you be more consistent. Because if you try to spread yourself across, you know, not only will you be doing silly things like we mentioned earlier in terms of like the money happiness fallacy. Yes, we're digging holes, the Kevin Samuels thing, and then people pushing back from a priestly stance. We know they're not priests, and so on and so forth. But also because you have the best chance of actually rising to the top of any particular hierarchy and be viewed correctly as such. If you actually stick to one, right? And I don't mean don't do anything else. I mean, if you stuck to the principles of one, right? And then don't try to play media, and maybe I'm going to rub shoulders with the politicians, play a little bit of warrior prince, and then try to do I'm a holy man at the same time. By definition, in the past and in other societies, it will be clearly seen through, right? You're like, whoa, you don't mix these two things, okay? So that is a very, very, very good point. Bro Truth. Oh no, that's not Bro Truth. I was looking at the picture rather than looking at Sebastian. Sebastian, what's going on? What you got for us?
Hey,
And by the way, I'm gonna split now. So, but great show, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sebastian, my bad. What you got for us, sir?
Yeah, what's going on? I just want to jump in here real quick because you talked about something that was very interesting and piqued my antennas when it came to the idea of money and being a merchant, a bad thing in relation to high value men. The whole discussion about how we grew up or we get this influence that money is a bad thing, but it's not necessarily bad or necessarily good. I just want to offer my perspective. I grew up in a upper middle class family, and when things hit the fan and my family separated, we had succumbed into poverty, and I had witnessed a lot of the negatives when it comes to family, such as fake relationships, and a lot of situations where I discovered who people who associate themselves with others of high value are not as strong when it comes to bonds or integrities. But of course, that was my particular situation. Of course, maybe if I was in a different city or different upper middle class people, it could have been different. Who knows? But that was my interpretation of my life. And because of those experiences, being a merchant is on the bottom of my hierarchy. What I consider to be valuable are, of course, the sage, priest, and scholar mindset. Incorporating that into my life with my spirituality and my connection with God. It's only through those connections that I've been able to accomplish and give myself the power to achieve what I have done so in my education, in my business, my money, etc.
Excellent.
Yeah, but I have to say one thing, though, in regards to how the world is all about material and being a merchant. From my perspective, I would say that the difference between the past and now is that pre-industrial revolution, the commodity was life or blood. If you wanted to achieve something, you would have to either sacrifice one of the two. In today's era, it's more of a focus on what monetary value can you bring across? What can you achieve through that sense? And I feel like in today's day and age, and a disadvantage that I'm at right now is that you need to have that hierarchy of being a merchant in one of the tops, not necessarily the top, but in order to thrive in today's day and age, you cannot put forward your good intentions, your ideologies, or the um, revelations or inventions that you wish to bring to society without that merchant hierarchy. And that's why you see the Elon Musks of the world and other, billionaire quote humanists. They've all gotten to the stage they're at now because they've had the merchant hierarchy, and it's almost like they flipped it into a different hierarchy once they've accomplished that set. So it's almost as if in today's day and age, you need to build that, and then once you're at that level, then you can choose the righteous path that you wish to follow, whether that be an artist, sage, warrior, what have you. And I just want to share some of that reflection with everybody, especially on the idea that it's difficult for those who, it's difficult for those who not necessarily worship money, but are afraid to tap into that and get enthralled in that. For those,
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
Yeah. Shout out to Dr. Thunder. He says he's out. Now, you said quite a few things there. And the first thing that comes to mind is the notion, the truth, that there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs, right? And that if you go and if you just live, if you were living, maybe in a different time, a different space, but it wasn't modern day Western society, upper middle class. Maybe you're living in a monastery somewhere, right? And it was all about these sage, monk-like, priestly values, if you will. I'm sure you know, and you could probably even imagine, the kinds of corruption that can be fostered in there.
Absolutely.
Right? So you had the fortunate situation, I put it that way for a second, of being able to be forced to look within to find what it was that made you tick, right? Your motivation, right? Because you had certain facades fall down.
Yes.
Right? And then, so no solutions, only trade-offs. All these things have their pitfalls, right? And then when it comes to ordering it in terms of like, how valuable is it truly to be ruled by your stomach? Which is the way that Nietzsche would put it, right? That is obviously does not have a great connotation, right? So the bourgeois, okay, the bourgeoisie, from a philosophical standpoint, not from the modern day jargon political type talk. From a philosophical standpoint, the bourgeois is always is looked down upon, even worse than the underclass. So the bourgeois is that merchant class, okay? They're seen as the worst from time immemorial, okay? And there are philosophical reasons why, and I share some of the leanings from what one might call a conservative bent, even though I tend to be more of a open-minded, therefore libertarian type person, okay? But I do have a lot of conservatism in me as well, of a certain shade, because of my love of order and discipline and so on and so forth. So and then because I'm of the artist thing, because I just gave myself the rank where, like, if you noticed, right, I said, hey, sage first, artist second, right? And then the merchant comes in, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not even in my top two,
Right.
Even though I'm constantly over here talking about money, but I do see it as a shovel. And that's why that it strikes me when people do that leap, jump to start talking about like money was supposed to make me wise or happy or something. It's like, I need shovels so that I can do my scholarly thing. I need the money so that I can get the freedom so that I can be able to have certain leisure, right? And leisure, as we know, and scholarship go hand in hand. And you need money to do that. Either you're independently wealthy or you are being sponsored, right, by the Medici family or something like that, right? So I have big qualms, and I tend to agree with Nietzsche a lot about this particular being governed by your stomach. This kind of, it seems very narrow. It's very myopic. It's not grandiose. It is not the artist's world for sure. Neither is it the scholarly world about purity and truth. It is the stomach. What's inspiring about the stomach, right? So I 100% I'm with you on many levels. But my whole thing was here to kind of take away the confusion so that at least people can clearly see and be able to categorize so that they're not confused and don't have to say, have things bleed into each other and go, well, if I go after money, does that mean I'm sacrificing this, that, or it's like, no, you can have a rank ordering and you can understand that money is the tool, but it doesn't necessarily mean that those virtues necessary for the pursuit of money are at the top of your hierarchy, right? You can be like, okay, hard work, blah, blah. But anyways, there's one thing I wanted to add, which is this. There's something that cuts across all hierarchies, and that's discipline. It takes discipline to be the monk, the general, the merchant, or the artist. And that is one thing that I would have to say here, which is that there is one particular virtue, okay? There are others, but one in particular that cuts across all of them is the need for discipline. Discipline meaning structured pursuit of certain rules and principles, right? And that is meta to all of these things, okay? But I'm definitely, as I just gave with my ranking, I'm definitely with you on that being ruled by your stomach game. So I don't know if you had any reactions to what I just said.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's just that, I find that, I don't want, like, I respect people who have that hierarchy of being a merchant. It's just that for myself, and I'm sure you can understand, is that I see it as a tool, like you do in your metaphor, which is perfect. And I also understand that being enthralled by living as a merchant can kind of create a toxicity to your other virtues. But at the same time, in order to accomplish what you need, going back to that other point I was saying, in order to accomplish what you want to do with your philosophies and your inventions and your good intentions, you need to have that kind of overshadow your other hierarchies until you're at that stage.
Yeah, like the Elon Musk thing that you said. It is true. It is true that, and to put it in stark terms, that while you're hungry, it is hard to think of anything else.
Yeah.
That's why these are the base values, right? That need to be satisfied first. If we want to use that boring and very well hated by me, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I find that thing very annoying. But if one must speak in such terms, then it is true that you do have to kind of put that in there. But I don't know if it's one of those things, because I'm always cautious about things that are easy for me to say. In other words, that whole thing about, well, easy for you to say, easy for this other person to say, that kind of thing, because we all have psychological predispositions and so on and so forth. We all have different, we all have different toolkits that we're playing with.
Right.
So it might be one of those things that is easy for me to say, but for me, I can very clearly separate them, where it's like, I can do this and also have my eye on the prize, and also then order my life in a certain way such that it's not interfering. I've been making music for the longest time. I have known right from the beginning that I did not want music to be a means. I didn't want music to pay the bills. There was something that was going to taint it. I didn't also want architecture to pay the bills, and that's why I switched to engineering, because architecture was more artistic for me. I didn't want any of my artistic endeavors. In other words, art was so high up in my hierarchy, I did not want to taint it with the pursuit of money, right?
Right.
So I'm gonna study engineering. I'm gonna start an engineering business. I'm gonna be learn soft skills, be a salesperson, so on and so forth. But all the while, I'm gonna continue doing music. And what am I getting out of the music? As I mentioned in the last stream, was I'm doing music at a certain level that I have respect of certain people that are respected in the music industry because I've been able to be consistently work with them. They've seen that I'm valuable in that regard. They've seen my talent, if you will, right? That I'm actually good at. Someone reached out to me recently, like, "Hey, we need you to. We're looking for songs for this particular documentary, right? And here's the information. Can you write something, right? And this is not something that pays my bills, okay? So for me, and also in terms of the philosophical studies, which is at the very top, the scholarly life, I'm like, that has never left my focus while I'm doing all these things. Now, the reason why I say it's easy for me to say is because I'm just crazy like that. I'll work 16-hour days. I'm an introvert too, right? So I'm locked up somewhere just doing crap, and pulling all-nighters quite frequently. But that's not going to be for everybody. Definitely if you're an extrovert, you have a disadvantage in that regard, in the sense that you do need some human contact from time to time. So, but I would say this, what I just said, to what you said, that yes, it is the case that you do have to pursue that money thing, but it does not necessarily have to be the case that you subordinate it until you get to a certain position. You can order it in a certain way if you have these categories neatly separated, if that makes sense.
Interesting, yeah.
Let me see here. Who came first? I'm confused now. Who's next on the panel? I think,
to be honest with you, I don't know.
That would be no. I think it's In Young. Can you what you have for us, sir?
Yeah. So can you hear me?
Yes.
How's it going, Ike?
Pretty good. How are you, sir?
I'm good. So pretty much all I wanted to add, and I believe I have a question in this too, is that what I recognize is that the pursuit of happiness, first and foremost, is a new concept, historically speaking. And it's distinctly a Western affluent capitalist thing. You know what I mean? So as a virtue, I guess you could say. I just wanted to lay that out first. As far as the topic is concerned, one thing that I've recognized, historically speaking, you said that the virtue of discipline runs through all of the different hierarchies. One thing that I recognize is that in America, in the West specifically, because we have a society rooted in Judeo-Christian values, we tend to, I want to say, go too far left when we view how we're supposed to operate in these hierarchies. So, perfect example, when we talk about the church, when you talk about money in the church, making money in the church, the hierarchy that's emphasized there is the priestly hierarchy, right? Being the good person, right? The problem that we find in that there is that from a Christian or Catholic, whatever you are, standpoint, the teachers in those or not the teachers, but the forefathers of those religions, of that religion, specifically says things like be like the unruly servant who was shrewd and he knew how to use money to avoid essentially going broke and being poor. You have instances in his teachings where he says things like, well, when Paul says things like, qualify yourself by reading, qualify yourself for the thing that you say that you are, right? And so when I say that people go really far left, what I'm saying is two things. First and foremost, people hyperize this idea of being a monk You know what I mean? Like they essentially say, you typically hear it all the time. The root of all evil is money, right? When we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about when you said it earlier, and Kevin Samuels sees it all the time. When somebody says, "Hey, being a high value man, one of the main things, one of the aspects of being a high value man is having money," and then the person comes and says, "What about character? What about stuff like that?" Right? Essentially, what I'm saying is that because we live in the society that we are in, and we are afforded the first world problems that we have, we in effect downplay the reality that money is a tool that gives you access to certain things, and we uh, um, overvalue. I don't want to say. I'm not sure if overvalue is the right word, but we end up using this virtue hammer to
Mm-hmm.
beat down, the idea that money is something that should be pursued. Excuse me, that money is something that should be pursued, and within it, and in its proper context, is something that should be valued.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
No,
Um,
I completely understand. It's almost like a overcompensation and also a lack of understanding and clarity as
right,
to
exactly. And
what else is
I'm just
going on.
looking, and just being just being Nigerian. I've been there. It's crazy because when you go across the pond, right, you see that the way our society in America views these things and the way that other poor people, I guess you could say, view these things, it's too different. They view it completely different. And ultimately, it, it's it's I I just think that if we are to, well, first of all, in America, I don't think there's any way of going back, but I do think that as far as like going back to understanding that each hierarchy has its own place, and then moving from there, I think at the end of the day, because we have uh, uh, a movement that says that everybody's opinion is valid, and you know what I'm saying, like there's no, I guess, how would I put this without taking up too much time. Um, well, because everything bleeds over and nobody really understands the purpose of each category hierarchy uh, in America. I don't think that there's ever going to be a time we can when we can honestly look back and say, well, we've progressed in this area. People have found usefulness for the warrior. People have found usefulness and
Mm-hmm.
for the
Mm-hmm.
you get what I'm getting at. I don't think that there's any going back, but I do believe that and this is really, I said I had a question, but I really have a comment. I do believe that things like what you're doing are necessary specifically for the men. What Kevin Samuels are doing is necessary specifically for the men, because in as much as the men understand these roles, they're able to make the proper decision and make the proper moves for their lives to go to move forward. What's the word? Wisely. When I was growing up, I didn't hear things like this.
Hmm.
I didn't hear things like what Kevin Samuels said, so I didn't know there was a distinction. You get what I'm saying? I wanted to be the philosopher, didn't realize that I needed money. But I was raised in a church, so I had a I had a negative I had a high value for knowledge, a high value for being a priest, but I had a low value for being a merchant, and I moved accordingly. And now that I'm older, got a kid, got a wife, I'm realizing, okay, well, wait a minute, this has its place, and it should be pursued within the proper context so that I can get the outcome that I want. Um,
100%. I
so yeah,
Next will be Io and then Chaos Rain and then Kaizo. Um, just a quick little comment there on what you said about the pursuit of happiness, and also let's just say the emphasis on freedom will make it such that definitely there will not be a structure to the society that makes it such, like let's say, like the Indian caste system, for example, where these categories are clear, right? There's an emphasis on freedom, emphasis on equality, and then there's this notion of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which at least it was is a rational attempt, or an attempt at founding a people based on as rational as possible a myth. the myth of the state of nature, from which we come up with the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness type talk, right? And as a result of that, people also tend to think, people don't realize that it is a myth because it seems so rational. But it is as much of a myth as any, as saying, that Romulus or whatever kind of founding god or, pseudo god, demigod type person came from the volcano and with a sword of whatever from a dragon, and it's the same thing. It's just written in philosophical language. It says, hey, imagine the state of nature and this, that, and the other, blah, 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 and then Hobbes and Locke, and then out of that we say, hey, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and we must worship these things. And then, but it is part of the issue and the problems with the modern political project. So 100% agree. Ayo, what do you have for us? Are you muted? Ayo Adeojo.
Ayo!
Chaos.
Man, dead asleep. Well, let me go while he figures.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Chaos.
That was a very good dissertation, Ike.
Interesting.
It reminded me back in ancient times that people didn't understand, for most people that could serve and run a country, because we're in the corporation here in America, but in general, most people that are princes or kings, they have to serve some form of military.
Okay.
And people don't understand why they have to serve military, because they have to understand nature of man and warfare. And it's totality. Because you're going to be combating and dealing with and competing with other groups of men. And other groups of men carry a certain civic skill set. And normally one of the main tools, like anything, because you're from Nigeria, that there's always a thing they call rites of passage. You have to show, can you hold and survive the elements, your environment? Can you oppose it? And if you have failed, then you are unfit to rule and control, because one of the best things a man has to show at anything is he could dominate his environment. How are you going to dominate others or protect when you don't have the ability to, Yeah, so that's all I want to say for now.
That is an interesting point that you bring up with these, because it's, as we know, these categories all exist within this continuum, this whole happy human life and human living bunch, and there are things to be gleaned from each, and this rites of passage and other those kinds of things, the martial values, if you will, are necessary. So just like with the sage one and the merchant one and so on and so forth. So that is a key point. Now, Ayo, are you back? Are you mic'd up? Can you say something?
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can. What do you have for us?
Good evening, Ike. Thank you so much for proceeding with this show. Learning a lot so far, and I guess one of the main things that I wanted to touch on was, I guess, the difficulty and then the truth that I believe, at least, that in this merchant to prince pathway, most will fail, and it's reserved, well, the top levels at least, is reserved for the very few. And that's something I've kind of noticed. I'm a younger person, but really what it takes, it's quite vicious. It's quite it's quite cold-hearted, and I mean raw at the end of the day. I mean, we're talking about, and it definitely does conflict. And I'm finding myself particularly having to invest in things that I never thought I would have to get to levels I want to. Image consulting, voice coaching, so that my voice sounds a certain way so I can persuade others. Because I mean, it's a great weapon, your voice. I mean, we're not fighting battles or wars, but words do hold a lot of weight. And that's kind of the comment I kind of want to add to that. I really do appreciate, again, you clarifying these things, because personally I've had issues and conflicts, because I'd be judging the prince on the values of the sage, and vice versa. But you know, this really has given me kind of a perspective that I can situate myself in, knowing that, okay, maybe I'm this particular type of person, and this is the hierarchy I should concern myself with, and let the others, you know, if we're talking about princes, we'll talk about prince stuff. If we're talking about sages, okay, we'll go over there and not mix them. So I do appreciate that again, Ike, and that's kind of my comment for now.
100%. Yes, it's lonely at the top. Cliches are often ignored, and we're often surprised by the truth of cliches, aren't we? Right? And yes, of course, by definition, the rare is reserved for the rare. The exceptional things are reserved for exceptional. Regardless of how you want to define exceptional, if you just keep it strictly in a numbers sphere, it's going to be the minority by definition. So that is just that's a given, and then you go on whatever path you're going down with all the skills you're trying to develop and so on and so forth towards the ends that you're pursuing. So Kaizo, can you say something? What you got for us?
Yeah, I'm gonna take us to a slightly different direction over here. I'm gonna try to give something away, but I also try not to give it away. So the interesting thing here about the hierarchies is that the lack of understanding, or making it, you know, like an intuitive understanding between the different types of hierarchies that exist in society and reality, is part of the reason why we can't seem to have an equilibrium of the times. Goes very well into why each society has great nations that become great in each time particularly, and then they become not great, and then they end up falling and failing. From the beginning of ancient Babylon, ancient Aksumite Empire in Ethiopia, all the way down through the Greeks, and up to now to the American civilization, which seems to be collapsing. It happens that it's a lack of understanding of each person's position in each hierarchy, and the conflation between each one, and overvaluing of different parts of the hierarchy, which it's not obvious that it should be somehow the best hierarchy, or how to value it. A perfect example is women, females, and obviously minorities, knickers, and all these fringe groups in Western society. I'll demarcate it a little bit. It becomes apparent that a lot of women in society in the West wants to be valued for their thing that they're naturally good at. However, instead of fighting for that kind of pure reason and understanding, and kind of making that their point of conflation, they have construed that with the hierarchy of capitalism, which is more masculine based kind of abstraction. So what they truly seeking is to be accepted in society for who and what they are. And instead of kind of fighting through that position, they want to be accepted in the capitalistic hierarchy, which, statistically speaking, from a quant perspective, they won't ever be as good at, because that is it's a far more masculine-based abstraction. It will be unnatural for them to be able to, as a group, compete with the other group at equal levels if the rules remain the way they are. So what they've done is they've seen, okay, society values money, society values success in so-called sciences, so-called natural sciences. Therefore, they have tried to impregnate themselves within this system and calling it unfair if they don't compete at the same level, as opposed to understanding that there are different hierarchies that exist, and that there is nothing wrong with a quant difference between groups within these hierarchies. Now, the other thing, that's from them as a people. However, as a society in all, we make the error of overvaluing particular hierarchies. We make an error of having the hierarchies of the times. The issue here is many people won't fit into this hierarchy, and of course they will be seduced like a seducing spirit by those who want to destroy this hierarchy, which they feel they have been subjugated within. But if there were many competing hierarchies that were valued in society, for example, a simple example is, let's say, cheerleaders. Cheerleading is an actual needed necessary component of the hierarchy as much as the basketball player, right? Now, if you value the cheerleader and you actually give them a reward that is appropriate, and you create a hierarchy within the cheerleaders and actually project that cheerleading hierarchy as if it's important, guess what? People who are good at cheerleading will also feel fulfilled in a similar way as the people who are good at actually playing basketball. Now, this would kind of maintain a hierarchy if you could do this across different levels in society, and you wouldn't have that issue we keep having with the times. For example, hard times create strong men create good times, and then good times create weak men, and then the reverse keeps happening.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily because of the overvaluing of hierarchies by societies at each particular time frame.
And so you said you were going to give away something without giving it away. So what would be your solution? Okay. Or because you kind of stated, the nature of the landscape, and then some people's misinterpretation of things, and wanting their desires to be quote unquote reflected in reality when that's typically or usually not the case. Well, is there a solution?
There is a solution, and I guess this is where I can't give it away too much, so I won't demarcate specifics exactly. But what we would need is a multi-level system that does value these fringe groups in the particular hierarchies that they're naturally good at. If you create a multi-level society, instead of kind of projecting society as a whole as if it's somehow this is the ideal society. Okay, I'll try to give a slight giveaway. Maybe, for example, prison, right? This is just one of the hierarchies that could be existing. You do not need the prison to be the way it is. What you could do is you could create a prison which is ultimately a shunning from society, from the mainstream society. You create an alternative prison society that exists where they have food, they have their own economies, they have their own families if they seek it, and they create their own hierarchies within that world. So we shun people who we think aren't playing by the rules that we've created, but you allow them to create their own hierarchies within that world. A, it will be useful in the sense that you could actually create a market economy. B, you would actually be able to allow people to also to reach their own development. Because just because they don't exist well within our society doesn't mean that they are bad or broken or somehow even wrong in any ways. It just means they didn't fit well in our hierarchies. The moment you flip that, you create one for them, they will reach their human potential. Most of them. Again, there will always be some, but at each level, as you're kind of demarcating it, what you're doing is you're creating new hierarchies, blossoming new ideations. I mean, Australians, the usurpers of Australia, the original pilgrims, usurpers of Australian land, were many of them criminals. Of course, they didn't remain criminals because they were in a new environment. They created a new hierarchy. Now, if you create this is just an example of the prison system here. A, it will be more humane because obviously you give them a chance. And also within this prison community, you give them a chance to re-earn their way back into the other society. If they want to, or if they don't want to, they just stay there. But this is a perfect example of how you can increase. And now for the females and the minorities and the knickers and all the other minorities, etc., there are other solutions for them too. I can't give that part away.
Mr. Sebastian, how does what Mr. Kaizo said strike you? Any reactions to what he said? Are you there, sir? Or are you muted? Seems to be muted. Okay, yeah. It does make sense that. Oh, now I'm hearing an echo from somebody. Okay. So the frontier has always been a way to kind of throw your problems into, right? And if there is a frontier on Earth, like the American frontier, people migrate. You mentioned the Australian case, for example, or maybe where we're going to go next, space. Maybe we send the prisoners to a space colony to go colonize the moon, and over there they will, kind of channel their energies in other directions, and they don't have to be in conflict with the dominant society and its rules, right? But it does tend to be the case. Well, I don't know how you would actually, when you say shun, right? The example that you gave was an example of kind of like a frontier example, some kind of a place where you have to send them into. Where are you going to send them? It seems like we no longer have these land frontiers. You're going to go down to the ocean. Are you sending people to the moon? Where are we sending these people, Kaizo?
Oh, well, there are very, very practical ways to implement this. The simplest one would just be to create a town, an expanding town within your own country with its own unique rules and laws that are more nature driven as opposed to nurture driven. So you allow the natural way that their minds have been accrued to, because the issue with a lot of these so-called criminals is they're not even criminal, right? There's nothing wrong with them. They're exactly how human nature should be, according to a million years of evolution. They are simply in a world that is actually too sterile for them. Actually, the world is what is wrong. It's this overemphasis on order as we've defined it in the modern times. But in terms of actually something being naturally wrong with these people, 100% no. Criminals are actually exactly the right people that exist in society who are needed to exist in society. So yes, the simplest one is just to create a town within your own society with its own rules and governance system. They would obviously have to be subservient to the other country due to the obviously various issues of control. But then you allow them to trade, you allow them to be sort of the frontiers and the some of the maybe military leaders in some sort. A second way to do it, I guess, is to send them into the unknown. There's still parts of the unknown, like the Sahara Desert, for example. You send them there to set up systems such as, maybe solar cells and trying to reclaim that land and, try to turn it into an actual society, like pilgrim-based systems. But the easiest one will be the town first and then send them there.
I see. That is I have no qualms philosophically with these people are naturally being who they are. Perhaps the problem is society, if you will, right? Even though I wouldn't put it in those terms, because there's some kind of a value, you're judging something there still. And it would seem like the system will be better, or my understanding of your system will be better, will be in a landscape where there is no judging of any kind of values whatsoever, because you can't say it's, you get what I'm saying. So I have no sweat, no heat, no judgment. But as usual, Kaiser, you're coming with ideas that are quite theoretical, abstract, true, though they may be. It will be interesting to the means of enacting such things. How do you, and perhaps let me ask Chaos Rain if he has any reactions to what Kaizo is saying. So Kaizo's over here saying, he took this thing to talk about how we treat people who are outside or who can't play in the particular hierarchies. Okay, they're in their nature. They're in jungle style stuff. We call them criminals. Okay, and you're saying, well, there really isn't anything wrong with them. They just need to go set up some other thing, some other place. Okay, what are your reactions to what he said, Mr. Chaos?
Well, everybody has usefulness and purposeness. In the society we call America, criminals serve their purpose. Society knows how to deal with the wicked and the bad to a degree, but nonetheless, in the order of capitalism, that's the name of the game. So that's the only way I could give my answer to that. To be fair. Blunt.
I make a little public service announcement, and then I'll ask for. Okay. And I'll ask for one round of closing statements, assuming Sebastian is still online there. Gotta wrap this up. Got a meeting. I was watching the chat and some dude and his bitch ass, whoever you are, that dumb nigga is not welcome here anymore in whichever shape or fashion he decides to come back in, because this is not the first time that his bitch ass has done this. And yes, with the full force of the word, both whether in person or not, you're a bitch ass nigga. So, anyways,
Ouch.
Okay, we came
Yeah.
back. Okay, did you have a comment on what Kaizo said, sir?
Who, me?
Yes, yes, you.
Okay. Yeah, I absolutely. Well, the question is, for those who've been sent to prison, are they truly, in fact, bad, or have they been utilized for someone else's ends means? Right? Like, I mean, that's debatable on its own. But absolutely, I feel that people who go against the direction of society are much needed for society in order to establish broader rules, broader order.
That is definitely an interesting take. I mean, don't these things kind of ring theoretical for you? I mean, we could. Okay, I'm sorry.
They do, but this type of stuff is never really black or white, right? It's never. There's a lot of gray areas in that, and I find that everybody has a purpose for their existence, whether that be good or bad.
Now, and were you going to say something, Kaizo?
Yeah, I was going to make a quick comment there.
Mm-hmm.
So a perfect example is, let's say you grow up in an inner city New York environment. Now, let's say due to perceived glass ceiling abstractions, you don't see yourself as having the ability to become a engineer or a lawyer or a doctor based on your environments. Let's say you're one of these people who is influenced by what you see around you. Now, if that's the case, becoming a drug dealer might be the way for you to rise up a hierarchy which is respected. Females will respect it enough to give you their attention, as well as the thing that you seek from them, as well as people around you. So you become a master of your own hierarchy with respect, leadership, and of course, there is obviously issues in the greater mainstream society. We don't value these people based on, obvious things. But the truth in this case is most of these people are just trying to master their own place in that hierarchy over there. And this is what they believe society has allowed them to be. And in a way, they might be right. Obviously, the action space is grander and greater. But if you're using basic logic here, is those of us who grew up with parents or environments where we have had the ability to be exposed to becoming doctors, lawyers, engineers, accountants, or any of these fields, and we've even had help in going down these paths, versus the people who grew up without any of these early interventions in their lifestyles. Of course, statistically, you can understand why they go down that crime-driven landscape. I can't even blame them, because it's only natural for you to, as a normal human being, to be whatever is around you. And to be honest, I don't think we should be judging them from a moralistic perspective unless we ourselves came from that environment. So if I was someone who came from an inner city environment and then I became something different, maybe I could judge them. But even then, maybe my nature is to see the hierarchy that would best serve my purpose and allow me to still be respected across all hierarchies. They are respected within their hierarchies, but obviously not within our hierarchy. So even then, I would say that I would be an outlier. So even then, basically, the point I'm making is it's impossible for anyone to judge something which they are not. If I was a normal average human being, I grew up in an inner city environment and then I escaped it, and I was thriving in the mainstream environment, maybe I could judge them. I would say that's the only kind of individual that can judge them.
So let me ask you a direct question, and I'm also going to ask. I don't think that because Mr. Sebastian kind of gave his kind of hierarchy, or at least one level of it. Kaizo, I suspect you're going to tell me something like, you constantly shift the hierarchies depending on blah 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 blah. But answer the question in whichever way you choose. How would you rank? Okay, vis-a-vis the categories that we created. How would you rank your hierarchies? What's on the top for you?
Right. Okay. So the highest hierarchy will be the philosopher, politician. So in my system, in my country, Kaiserland, there will be the highest abstractors. This will be philosophers slash scientists. They will have to go through a creation system where they're taught about the nature of businesses, reality, the world, also the scientific method, so that they can be the leaders of society. They will be specifically created in order to maintain the hierarchies, understand the equilibrium nature of the hierarchies, etc. And then you would also have in a prison system their own hierarchies of doctors, lawyers, all of these other people that would exist within the prison society. And then they would be allowed to kind of earn their way into the mainstream society if they want to. If they don't want to, they can remain there, and they can still actually earn a level of competence, which would allow them to kind of interact with our society without any sort of boundaries. So they could still remain in the prison society, become their own leaders, etc., and they can still interact with us without having to join us in any particular sense. So they will become like, interlopers in the easiest sense. You do this, and then also for females, you would also create a hierarchy of the things that are natural to them. For example, as a simple example for kind of incorporating them into society is you actually create games, competitions that they're good at, that they can compete with each other or us, so that they can actually win something. Because ultimately, the reason why we have, feminism and let's say the anti-racist movement and all these fringe groups is because that they've understood that actually, you know what, I think the hierarchy just doesn't value us, and there's nothing intrinsically right about it. It's just a hierarchy. So instead of kind of understanding, well, we can create hierarchies that we are good at and kind of brainwash people into accepting that this is a good thing, they've decided to kind of break down the hierarchies, which is dangerous because obviously this is how societies always break down. So you kind of create that hierarchy, you create the games that they're good at, and then you value them, and then you kind of teach kids from an early age that yes, they are valuable, this is important, this is needed, this is just as good as a lawyer or doctor. That way you can still get you can just get enough hierarchies for people can compete. Obviously you can't make an infinite level of hierarchies, that would defeat the purpose, but you make enough that you kind of cover most dissensions that could cause the system to collapse on itself.
Okay. So, Mr. Inyang, couple of things. You did mention about, if I'm correct, that you have that priestly thing as the top, right? And probably somewhere towards the bottom, you got this whole merchant thing. So apparently, Kaizo land is similar to Plato's Republic in the sense that he's gonna have these philosopher king types that are running things. Can you restate what exactly your hierarchy system would be, Mr. Inyang?
Yeah. So I was saying that the priestly is priestly, philosopher, merchant was what it used to be. Currently, it is still priestly, but a very close second is the merchant hierarchy, and then the philosopher is gonna be it's gonna be like my third. Well, warrior and philosopher are a close third. If I were to rank it, it'd be if I were to rank it objectively, it'd be priestly, merchant, warrior, philosopher.
God damn it! The time is approaching my the time that I'll have to exit here because of a meeting that I have, a phone call I have to make. However, this has been quite interesting. Okay, this has been quite interesting. And I'm going to ask now for some closing remarks from the panel, starting with my man Sebastian, and then we go clockwise to Kaizo, and then back to Inyang. What do you have to say? Any closing thoughts, remarks regarding this particular topic of hierarchies and anything else that's been brought up in this conversation?
Yeah, very interesting topic. Something I've never really looked at before. I know the hierarchy of needs with Maslow. I understand that concept, but not with the structure that you presented today. It's an interesting topic. I learned a lot in regards to where I set myself, and I feel like in the times, who knows what the future will hold, but I feel like the past can be used as an example to show how the hierarchy of needs in relation to their importance of what needs to be at the top goes with the times, goes with other sociological changes. So that being the primary focus of amping our merchant hierarchy to sustain a future in today's time. So yeah, great topic. I learned a lot, and yeah, it's always great to participate in your topics, Ike. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. People are asking for a part two, and yes, we might do that. What do you have for us, Chaos Rain, as far as closing thoughts, sir?
Nothing really much. The only thing if people want to take out of this broadcast that there is a form of hierarchy, but we have to understand what type of hierarchy we stand and where everybody else lays in this hierarchy. Some people could change their destiny and become that hierarchy, but the biggest question you should ask as a man: how much willing are you going to put into that work to be that hierarchy that you envision? That's the question you should answer. You could drop me down. If you don't drop off, just drop me down. Come on and talk to you after. But thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So, yes, 100%. Discipline cuts across all the, or is important for all endeavors being pursued across all hierarchies, right? So, Mr. I believe now that the order is off. Well, Mr. Inyang and then Kaizo.
Okay.
Any closing thoughts?
Yes. So kind of what everybody else has said. I think that for men, what we have to understand is that that each hierarchy has its place. You can choose whatever you choose. Just one, hold yourself accountable to the choice that you've made. Two, don't go looking at the other person, shitting on them, saying, "Well, where I stand, my pursuits are better than your pursuits." And then three, understand that your life, typically where you are in life, is going to determine which hierarchy you hold more valuable. And so, again, if you are the philosopher and you recognize that, hey, I need to make some money, go ahead and pursue that. Don't be the person that says, hey, the people who are making money need to start bringing themselves down to my level, essentially trying to conform society to your particular position in life, where you are, status in life. And that's pretty much all I had to say. I do want to make one comment to Kaizo. Oh man, I'm glad you put me before him because I wanted him to be able to rebut this or say something on this. I do believe that his view is very idealistic and contrary to human nature. What you are, and this is no disrespect to you, but what you are describing is essentially what we already have. You call it countries, cultures, tribes, things of that nature. When you have people going into their own hierarchies and flourishing there, you wouldn't be able to put that into a prison system because ultimately the purpose of the prison system is, in fact, you said it in your statement, is in fact to shun people out of society. That's the first thing. But the second thing is to create a distinction between what is good or what is pleasurable and what isn't, what is not necessary, but what should be and what shouldn't be, so that the people who are in the prisons desire to come out of the prisons better human beings. Our prison system is screwed up. It doesn't produce that, but that's the purpose of it. But that's all I have to say. I appreciate you for having me on.
Thank you very much. And for everyone in here, by the way, we're going to be doing a special show on Saturday. As you know, everyone, okay, we go live on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, okay? That's Saturday, Sunday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. On Saturday, we're going to be going on earlier. We're usually here at 5:45 Pacific. But, okay, we're going to have a special guest. A special guest, I was going to say, because Jessica X is going to be on the show. So we're going to be going earlier because it's across the pond, blah, 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 so on and so forth. So we're going to be going on at noon, okay? So I will be dropping the link for that, okay? And I will be sharing it. So we'll be bringing in Jessica X for an interrogation. And that will be at noon Pacific time, which will be 3 p.m. Eastern, which is 2 p.m. Central. Right? Yeah. 2 p.m. Central Time, noon Pacific. Okay. So Saturday show, we're here Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. But Saturdays, we are going to be doing it earlier. And we're having Jessica X. And we're going to be talking about the modern natural woman. Okay. And we're going to be interrogating her on that topic. So, Kaizo, okay, you've been accused several times on this very conversation about being theoretical. Perhaps acting like an ancient philosopher. By that I mean talking about the ideals, and you sound like Plato's Republic. Yes, we would do this, and then we would do this, and then men will and women will exercise together naked, and then there will be this and that, and we will allow these kinds of stories, and we will take off those kinds of stories. What gods shall we have for the people? So, what do you have to say about that, Kaizo?
All right. See, that's a very interesting criticism, because the interesting thing is I'm not idealistic. Theoretical, maybe, but even then, not so much, because my profession is actually experimental science, right? So I am practical. My so-called theoretical framework is imbued with practical potential. It's not as though I'm not a communist saying, oh, if we do this, we'd have a great system, we have idealism, or this would do this and then this will be great. No, my purpose and my kind of suggestion is something that will make a better system, not the perfect system. And I understand perfect tentatively, obviously. There's no such thing as true perfection. But, for example, right, the prison system. Yes, the prison system is due to two factors, at least. There's more, but one of them, yes, is to punish people who we think is deplorable to society. And the next reason is to apparently kind of return them into society, etc. Although that's never really emphasized in. Maybe in Europe, but in America, 100% not. America is more like, we hate you for what you did. We're trying to punish you. It's more of it's to ostracize people. Anyways, the point I'm making here is this. You don't need to create this black and white linear A-B difference between the prison world versus the society. Mm-hmm. You could easily, and I mean easily, this is not idealism, I mean just easily create a new town like they did in Australia, and it worked. Now, what you do is this. You make sure that the people in the prison system lose a sense or level of autonomy, meaning there is something that they would ultimately be seeking that they will never have until they've worked their way back into our society. So until they've earned themselves back the same level of freedoms, they will always be missing that freedom. And if you're missing that freedom, you will still make a demarcation. Ultimately, the point here is that there's a demarcation between being in the prison society, or at least being constrained within the prison society, versus being in the mainstream society. There has to be a demarcation that one is better than the other somehow. You could be maybe your ability to have a passport that you can roam across the world, or whatever it is, but there will be an aspect that they're missing. And that will still maintain that as being a punishment. But you still allow them to be useful and exercise and have themselves kind of realized as individuals. That way, you actually do increase the good, because you are allowing humans to reach their own potential, and you're still punishing them because there is a difference there. There's a marked difference there. And again, you could make different levels of prison societies within that prison society. You don't have to have it like a linear good bad we have it today. And I can assure you that this is how societies will end up going in the future. This is not a theoretical thing. This is exactly how it's going to end up. The way that things are right now is not it's not sustainable. Already in Europe, we're already having people that want to disband prisons altogether. But obviously that can't work because you do need ways to protect the sheep from the natural proclivities of the fox to be devoured. You do need that kind of demarcation. So this would allow it to be humane and still also allow that for productivity also to exist without it being seen as some kind of slavery, because they will still earn something so that it is still acceptable.
Wow. Okay. So, in Yang, what he has assured you is that this is how it's going to happen. So you were challenged and you said, well, it's not idealistic, perhaps a little bit theoretical, and this is how it's going to go down. And you know, I think you gave a good argument as to why things will inevitably lead in that direction, and that you're not saying that it is ideal anyways. I tend to kind of agree with that whole, you know, having somewhere to put the chaos into so that it can go do something, because it's all nature anyways, right? Have nature continue to do what it does. So thank you very much, Kaizo, Chaos Rain, Sebastian, and Yang, Dr. Thunder, Io earlier, everyone that joined the stream. So today, over here, where we talk about things at a high level, where you can talk about what hierarchy you're in and talk about philosophical concepts, okay? And also talk about bitch ass niggas trolling in the chat and so on and so forth. Where else, gentlemen, can you and ladies, can you get this kind of content? I tell you, only here, and only here on Saturday. You will be having Jessica X over here at 12 noon. So be here, okay? We're going to be talking about nature, okay, and modernity, okay? Nature and modernity through the viewpoint of the modern natural woman, okay? I'm going to go ahead and create a nice little thumbnail. I'll put it out there, and we will be having a great conversation. We'll open up the panel and so on and so forth. So today, just to wrap things up, okay? Just to wrap things up. Yes, I know, Jonathan, that I'm late for the call, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Now, you need to stop making the category mistakes that we make, okay? You need to stop talking about happiness when people talk about money. I say, hey, nigga, we're digging holes out here, okay? We're digging holes and we need shovels. So stop talking about happiness when somebody brings up shovels. Stop bringing in money. So stop talking about happiness when people talk about money. When Kevin Samuels says, hey, these are my merchant class type of values, okay? Don't run from the hilltop, from your monastery, and say, hey, how about me? I'm holy. I want recognition and so on and so forth. It does not look good. It shows a lack of understanding. It exposes a certain kind of overcompensation and a lack. Okay. Let me not beat that to death. You can go back and, you know, if you've been here the whole stream, you get the point. Well, point is, okay, you have the priestly class. You have the princes / warriors. Broadly speaking, also you have artists and you have the merchants. These are different archetypes doing different things, pursuing different ends measured by different yardsticks. Don't make the category errors. Also understand that within these particular categories, there are virtues that are required for the attainment of the values that are stated. But also, each of these is ranked by the society, okay, that you're coming from. You have in India where the priest is on top, okay, merchant tends to be at the bottom, and then the whole thing is flipped in modern day capitalistic type of democracies and so on and so forth, liberal democracies and so on and so forth, okay? So where are you? What hierarchy games are you playing? And how do you rank them? Okay, I rank the philosopher, priestly, consciousness, scholarly, at the very top. Next is the artist, and then comes the merchant. Okay, and then the last would be the warrior type. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as usual, I'm going to ask you for a vote. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, what's going to be our outro song? Okay? Are we going to go with 1, Battle Within, 2, Run, 3, Toll Road? So 1 is Battle Within, 2 is Run, 3 is Toll Road. And now we shall tally up the votes for how we will close this out, ladies and gentlemen. And this is not Chicago, okay? As I say, we don't vote often. Wow, we have a vote for. We have another vote. Wow. The twos seem to be having it so far. The twos have been winning lately, okay? It seems like people like to run out of here. So it seems like I start with Battle Within and I end with Run. I might introduce another song to replace, or to add to the rotation, if you will. Q-Dog wants to hear Toll Road, which is 3. No one else is joining him on the 3, okay? And while we're at it, let me go ahead and see what happened, if anything, in the land of the Cash App, all right? What happened over here? Nice. And the twos have it. Ladies and gentlemen. Run, come, make we get it. So, your time is very much appreciated, ladies and gentlemen. Snuggles 123, Snuggles 123, of course. So what I'm going to do actually is I might play 2 and then I'll play 3. And peace.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannon could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising and hearts are compromising, conditions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest and the righteous in your corners. Go. Run, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make we get it. Calling out your daughters and your sons, we can't forget it. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling out your daughters and your sons, we can't forget it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make we get it. Calling out your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling out your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. Run for the hills, let the will lead the mind. For living is the thrill with the doubt left behind. meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling on your daughters and your sons, they come we get it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, come, make we get it. Calling on your daughters and your sons, they come we get it. Run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling on your daughters and your sons, we come we get it. Run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling on your daughters and your sons, we come we get it.
I travel by night and I travel by day. I feel the breeze, I feel the call, and I see the gravel and the grass by the way. I hear birds and they're mating call. The toll on the road is a small price to pay, small price to pay for the saving of the race. And so I say, aye, people, what you waiting for? Take one and leave one and take it to go. Make a decision and get on the road. Open your vision for the sun to shine on. Bamboo and acorn and a letter I wrote. Big ones and small ones and a pipe for a toe. The rhythms of time is the horse I ride on. I travel by night and I travel by day. Feel the breeze, I feel the call, and I see the gravel and the grass by the way. I hear birds and they're mating call. The toll on the road is a small price to pay, small price to pay for the saving of the race. And so I say, aye, people, what you waiting for? Will there be raindrops and rainbows so clear? Perhaps some snow angels, maybe a bear. Anticipation in the heart casts a fog upon the road. How far till the train stop? I wish I was there. I glance at the paper just to be clear. All the coming and the going that will be once was foretold. I travel by night and I travel by day. Feel the breeze, I feel the call, and I see the gravel and the grass by the way. I hear birds and they're mating call. The toll on the road is a small price to pay, a small price to pay for the saving of the race. And so I say, aye, people, what you waiting for? Sha-na-na-na-no, sha-na-na-na-ne, sha-na-na-na-no. Shana na na ne, shana na 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 no. Shana na na no, shana na na ne, shana na na no, shana na na ne, shana na 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 no. I travel by night and I travel by day. Feel the breeze, I feel the call, and I see the gravel and the grass by the way. I hear birds and they're mating call. The toll on the road is a small price to pay, a small price to pay for the saving of the race. And so I say, aye, people, what you waiting for? Build shelter, make sure there's room for another. For surely what is mine unto you I will offer. For diligently guarding a citadel and cover. Wait for me by the green hill, my sister out there. You be safe
from the blizzard and the blister. The marching will be hard, the mountains will shiver. So wait at the green hill down by the river. The harvest of the year, and all the chaff is cast away. Marching then retreating to live to march on all that the resources are depleting. Guess it's just the price we pay. Emotions, they are fleeting and lead many a man astray, tormented by the sword and the vagaries of war. The children of brethren cut down to the floor. Tyrants will freely born, and the masses will applaud. All treaties and systems and kinships will fall. Wait for me by the green hill, my brother, build shelter. Make sure there's room for another. Show me what is mine unto you I will offer. For diligently guarding a citadel and cover. Wait for me by the green hill, my sister out there. You be safe from the blizzard and the blister. The marching will be hard, the mountains will shiver. So wait at the green hill down by the river. Everlasting burn, the everlasting light, with passion and with verve. We shall tempt the edge of fate tonight. Cannons are blasting, hearts are filled with fire and fright. Weapons are massing, we're building them at higher heights. From depth of the sea to the soaring of the peaks, the children of brethren can't find their release. For vengeance or for peace, because the sorrow and the grief, the wind by the green hill will bring some relief. Wait for me by the green hill, my brother, build shelter. Make sure there's room for another. For surely what is mine to you I will offer. For diligently guarding a citadel and cover. Wait for me by the green hill, my sister out there. You be safe from the blizzard and the blister. The marching will be hard, the mountains will shiver. So wait at the green hill down by the river. Build shelter, make sure there's room for another. For surely what is mine to you I will offer. For diligently guarding a citadel and cover. Wait for me by the green hill, my sister out there. You be safe from the blizzard and the blister. The marching will be hard, the mountains will shiver. So wait at the green hill down by the river.